Good weekend ahead. All the tee times locally were snatched up rather quickly, so shout out to all of you. A lot of people going to be golfing this weekend as it's a rare mid-December 55-plus weekend ahead with some sunshine in the forecast. As it is every day, it's good to have you with us. Happy Thursday to you. Spence Checketts behind the mic, hosting the program today. That is Porter Larson behind the glass, producing the show. We've got a good guest list for you guys to get you ready for a busy weekend ahead in the world of pro football that starts tonight with a Thursday night tilt between the Falcons and the Bucs. Atlanta has been eliminated from the postseason. Tampa Bay trying to get back on track. It's been a rough 4 weeks for Baker Mayfield. He does get Mike Evans back tonight, does get Jalen McMillan back tonight as well. Mike Evans had that collarbone injury week 7, and Jalen McMillan had that really scary neck injury during the preseason. Speedster that hasn't played pretty much all regular season long. So NFL gets rolling tonight. Big week ahead, week 15. We are high speed ahead to the postseason. So a lot of good NFL games on tap. About 15 minutes before we said goodnight last night, the news broke that Sherrone Moore had been fired for cause at the University of Michigan for an inappropriate relationship with a staffer. Well, it's not funny. It's actually really sad on a lot of different levels. About 15 minutes after we signed off, I get an alert on my phone that Sherrone Moore had been arrested and was in custody. At the time, I think it was the Ann Arbor police, and then he was later transferred to Pittsfield Charter Township in Michigan. He remains in custody. He will be arraigned tomorrow at the court there as he is in the jail at I believe it's the Washita County Jail. And the Washita County prosecutor told ESPN that it does not expect a decision on whether to file criminal charges, but we will hear a lot more tomorrow. But my goodness, this thing escalated really quickly. There are a lot of very unseedy rumors out there that I will not speak to because I just don't know what's real and what isn't, based off of folks on social media throwing some things out there that are just bizarre. But this guy, man, it's not just a decision that will lead to him losing a job. He had about $16 million left on his contract. I can't believe he's going to see any of that. And I'm quite sure, this is an assumption, but I'm just going to throw it out there. My guess is his wife isn't like pumped about all this. So there's probably a family implication. He, as a result of the inability to control himself, has pretty much ruined his interim. And I don't know what's next for him. A lot of people didn't think Sherrone Moore was equipped for that job anyway. He went 9-3 this year. Of course, was a coordinator for a national championship team, interim coach when Harbaugh had to sit. Sherrone Moore was suspended himself for a couple games this year for his role in the Connor Stallions sign-stealing situation. There was a show-cause recruiting violation. The defensive coordinator for the Chargers, who a lot of people think might get this job, actually still has a show-cause on him. The Jason Winter guy who coaches for the Chargers now, he was one of Harbaugh's coordinators at Michigan, and he still has a show-cause probation on him if he goes to coach college. Kalen DeBoer's name is out there. Jed Fish, his name is out there, who, of course, is the coach of UW. Both those guys have strong ties to the University of Michigan, who is a very proud football program, but for the past 7-8 years has found itself in hot water almost every single week. So a wild soap opera type story unfolding in front of us in Ann Arbor, Michigan. And if any details come our way while we're on air, we will bring it to you. The latest on the historic deal that was announced earlier this week, broken by Ross Dellinger of Yahoo Sports, as private equity is not just here in college athletics, it's here in Salt Lake City with a partnership between the University of Utah and Otro Capital. We've covered it on the show the best we possibly could all week long. How much of this money immediately will be infused into the athletic department? I believe the first line of first priority is first order of business is to service the debt that Utah football and Utah athletics find themselves in. Certainly not a problem that is exclusive to the University of Utah. Most athletic departments across the landscape of the country need to service a little debt. So my guess is that's step number one, maybe some upgrades to the stadium and such. But some new details continue to kind of surface about the structure and what this is going to look like. So we'll bring the latest to you on the program today. Utah Jazz are back in action tonight. They're taking on the Memphis Grizzlies. That is a road game for the Jazz. The Utah men's basketball team will be back at it tomorrow, a home game against a good opponent, Mississippi State, out of the SEC. BYU will be back at it after their comeback win over Clemson at the Garden. And obviously, we are high speed ahead to the college football bowl season and playoff situation as well. Latest on some of the transfer announcements that have been made for the Utes and some of the rumors that are out there. Our friend Jason Patacchio from the Salt Lake Tribune has reported that Bert Ficklin is expected to sign to return to the University of Utah. That news came down a few hours ago. Interest from multiple P4 programs to enter the portal, and he's expected to sign his contract to return to the Utes later today. Shout out to our buddy Jason Patacchio from the Salt Lake Tribune. All right, first guest right out of the gates. Man, we have a lot to get to in the college football landscape. Kyle Bonagura, our buddy from ESPN, will roll by as our first guest. We'll preview the weekend ahead, including Thursday Night Football with our buddy Sam Bruckhouse. Green Wave alum, Tulane alum, so we'll have a lot to talk to Sam about. And then I always enjoy when I have an opportunity, certainly with a week like this, with sizable news breaking for the University of Utah Athletic Department. Dr. Chris Hill, live in studio for an entire hour. Set your alarm. That's going to be about 3:30. Our guys from Sports Court will stop by today. It's a good day to have them in. I would imagine we'll talk a little Sharon Moore. I would imagine we'll talk a little Michael Jordan versus NASCAR. That case was settled today after only 9 days of deliberation. I should say 9 days of trial. NASCAR elected to settle. Another win for Michael Jordan. A couple of NASCAR teams suing NASCAR basically for their right to franchise, have more equity in their own specific investments, and not have to renegotiate their deal every time a NASCAR TV deal comes up and has to be negotiated. So we'll get with our friends in Sports Court today. It's Kyle Bonagura, it's Sam Bruckhouse, Dr. Chris Hill. Little Sports Court on a Thursday. Me, Spence Checketts, all of you, the great listeners. And that guy, Porter Larson, who's producing the show. So, 15 minutes after right before the show was about to end, you actually were like, hey, Sharon Moore just got fired. I'm like, okay, what? How did this happen? The information that you had proved to be correct. I'm not sure where you were able to get that from. But then I'm driving home, and I get this alert that Sharon Moore is in police custody. And the details that have started to emerge that apparently he threatened to kill himself, told his wife that he was done, and then broke into the home of the staffer that he was having this affair with and allegedly held a knife to her neck and said he was going to end everything. And then he was arrested at a church, and he's being held with the potential charge of assault, but no official charges have been filed. This story, as Ron Burgundy would say himself, escalated rather quickly.
It did. There were rumblings about maybe an improper relationship. That was kind of it for the last couple of weeks on Twitter. But for it to kind of culminate in what we saw last night is just obviously chaotic, but super sad. And unfortunate that that guy wrapped a bunch of different people into his little web of as you said, lack of self-control. So unfortunate for Michigan, unfortunate for Mr. Moore. Hope the best for all those folks. But yeah, man, a crazy story that provides plenty of fodder and now plenty of fallout too.
Yeah, and we'll continue to track it. He remains in a jail in Michigan, and he will be arraigned officially in court tomorrow. All right, we'll talk about this with Kyle. Kyle Bonagura is going to be our first guest on a Thursday afternoon. But before we get to Kyle, courtesy of our good friends, and your good friends too at Prize Picks, it's time now for your opening tip.
Welcome to The Drive with Spence Checketts on Utah's #1 sports talk. Now into the studios of ESPN 700 to set the scene for the show. The opening tip of The Drive is brought to you by Prize Picks. Use the code ESPN700 and run your game with Prize Picks.
All right, you guys already know that Prize Picks is the best place to win cash on your sports knowledge. It's the holiday season, the best time of year for sports. We have bowl games, basketball matchups, playoff pushes. It is all happening at once. And while you and I are out here making decisions every day, what gifts to buy, what to eat, which game to watch, there's one place where it feels good to be right, and that is with our friends at Prize Picks. They've got some new features. Prize Picks now has early payouts. If your lineup gets off to a hot start, you may now have the option to cash those winnings out before the game even finishes. Is your fantasy football season more or less over? Well, mine is. But you can play fantasy football every weekend at Prize Picks. Pick your favorite players, and when they hit their projections, you win cash, no draft required. Step number one is you download the PrizePicks app today. Use the promo code ESPN700, and they're going to hook you up with $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. Promo code ESPN700 to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup, because on PrizePicks, it is good to be right. All right, a couple things here. We had our guy Trevor Riley in studio yesterday, and we love our guy. That's our guy. Love Trev. Utah legend, NFL vet, and very much looking to get involved here to help the University of Utah football program continue an upward trajectory. We're not sure. The information that we have at this point is that I think Witt's going to coach the bowl game at least. We don't have anything official. I've seen some rumors floating out there, but nothing official as of yet. So there's certainly kind of that thing hanging out there. The signing day recruiting class storylines certainly were something we covered quite a bit as the Pula twins were flipped. They're going to BYU. And obviously, the Celessi Moa flip from Tennessee to Utah was good news. Utah, according to Rivals, has the 8th best recruiting class, or I should just say the 8th ranked recruiting class in the Big 12, and very mid-table when it comes to the country. BYU, 3rd best recruiting class in the Big 12. West Virginia finished 1, Texas Tech finished 2, and BYU finished 3. Now, Trevor on the show yesterday said that his understanding is currently Utah football has $0 in NIL funds. I don't think that's true. My guess is Trevor is, and look, Trevor has sources up there that I don't. I mean, he talks to coaches and players with both Utah and BYU that I don't talk to on a daily basis unless we're interviewing them or I send a text, congratulatory text like happy birthday, good win, whatever it is. But that's kind of surface level stuff. But Bert Ficklin intends to sign a new deal to stay with the Utes today. And Bert, of course, when given his opportunity throughout the course of the season, when Devin Dampier was a little bit banged up, just looked like a really, really dynamic option at quarterback at some point when Devin elects to either leave or moves on or graduates. I haven't heard anything official with Devin Dampier signing, but all the indications are he is going to be back as well. So Bird, true freshman, 56 carries, 503 rushing yards, 10 rushing touchdowns. It felt like every time he touched the ball, something very dynamic was going to happen. But I also was thinking about this after our conversation with Trev. Ben Moa came on Sean's show last week after the news came down that his son Celessi had flipped from Tennessee to Utah. And Sean asked him the question point blank. He didn't say how much money is Celessi getting to come to the University of Utah. He just said, what sort of information can you share about whether or not Utah can keep up in the NIL land space? And Ben said, and I quote, they can keep up with anybody in the country. And the reason that's important is that Celessi didn't flip from southern Utah to Utah, respectfully. He wasn't headed to Weber State and decided to go to Utah. He was going to Tennessee. Tennessee has the 7th ranked recruiting class in the country. And the rumors were they were offering Nico Iamaleava $4 to $5 million to stay. Now, he ended up in UCLA, in Los Angeles, where he's from. But let's not get it twisted here. If Utah was really operating with $0 in the NIL coffer, Celessi wouldn't have flipped from Tennessee to Utah. The Obot kid from Idaho, who could have gone anywhere, wouldn't have landed at Utah. And certainly Bert Ficklin, who was receiving a ton of interest from other teams, would not have stayed at Utah. And then we'll see what happens with Devin Dampier. We'll see what happens with some of the other players. I don't know exactly what the number is. I just don't think it's as dire as a lot of people are pointing out. Now, it leads us into essentially the two teams in the Big 12, because that's who Utah has to compete with for now. And yes, you want to compete with teams in the Big 10 and in the SEC. But until, and hopefully you do, get an invite to play alongside those teams in the Big 10 at some point. I know a lot of Ute fans are hopeful. I can tell you a lot of Ute staffers and people up on the Hill still view that as their eventual landing spot, whether it's in a year or two or 4 or 5 or who knows. You have to look at your peers in the Big 12 because that has to be your number one priority. Obviously, you win your conference, you go to the CFP, and you have a chance to do something special. And by all accounts, the two teams of the Big 12 with the deepest pockets as far as being able to pay their players Texas Tech and BYU. And they were the two teams in Arlington playing for the conference championship this year. Now, right behind them was Utah, right? And Utah was a couple of maybe change decisions away from beating BYU and Provo. They were right there. You get that win, and then it's you with the opportunity to play Texas Tech for the Big 12 championship. Obviously, that's not what transpired, so there's no need to kind of relitigate that. But it brings us to the announcement this week that Utah Athletics has consummated a partnership with Otro Capital, a New York-based sports private equity firm. There's some misinformation and misnomer out there. Like, I've been laughing at people that I've been listening to talk about this on other stations. It's like worth your time to check it out because it's borderline hilarious how dumb they are. And there are plenty of pieces of information that are absolutely incorrect. The $500 million figure is not a check written by Otro Capital. It's not a payday loan that will come due at some point. That is spoken by people that don't understand the way that Utah has structured this deal. And it screams that Taylor Randall is behind this. And if there's one person that you should trust, I mean, look, Mark Harlan's been good to us. He comes on the show, and at times it gets a little, I would say, combative because I'm not afraid to ask Mark questions that nobody else will ask him. And I'm sure at times he gets off the phone and he's like, F that guy. But he's been good to us. He comes on the show. He answers the questions I ask him. But I know that there's a little sentiment across the market that's a little bit split on Mark. All right, that's fine. Mark is going to be the chairman of the board. The one guy that you should believe in unequivocally is the president of the University of Utah, and that is Taylor Randall. He is sharp. He is measured. He would not have consummated this deal if he knew that this was just a little bit of a cover and he was going to have to, pay the piper in a couple of years in a way that's not right for his athletic department, but more importantly, his institution. Taylor Randall and his motivation, yes, part of it is the athletic program because that's an important part of the University of Utah, and it's a very important part of our community, and the revenue that's generated by the football program is something that Taylor very much cares about. But I don't know what percentage I would put it at. As far as the overall scope of his responsibilities and what he has to focus on and what is important to him, is athletics 10% of the pie? Is it even that? I don't know. But when I looked into the structure of how this thing is done, and I want to give this guy credit, Alexander Baker is his name. He wrote a Substack on, I guess it's his Substack called The Millennial Mandamus, I believe is how you say that. And if you're looking for what I perceive to be the best thing written about this, maybe just do a Google search, The Millennial Mandamus, and this guy's name, Alexander Baker. It's not that long, but it's very detailed, and he goes into extreme I have to imagine this dude is like a lawyer or a business owner because he goes into extreme detail about how this thing was set up, how long Utah has been preparing for an opportunity like this. Like there was like a little bit of a side company set up to kind of absorb an LLC like this back in 2022. And to me, this is Taylor. This is Taylor Randall seeing around corners, seeing ahead of everybody else, and understanding at some point they might have to execute a deal like this, and they were ready with their I's dotted and their T's crossed. Now, as I've talked about all week, I can't run from the inevitable pitfalls and believe that this is something I could spin to you to convince you that it's only good, because we simply don't know. There's actually a part of me that believes that Utah undervalued their product. And if that's the case, eventually this could come back to bite them. I don't know what the valuation would be. My guess is based off of the 2 seats Otro has and the number 500 million, depending on how much of that is Otro Capital and how much of that is local investors. My guess would be a valuation would look something like $1.2 to $1.8 billion, somewhere in that range. And I can tell you, if Utah gets a Big Ten invite, or if in 3 to 4 years, and remember, this is important, their exit strategy, their plan is to exit in 5 to 7 years. That's not an accident for a couple of reasons. The Big 12 TV deal will expire around then. But the big kind of white whale that's out there is if at that point, Utah either gets a Big Ten invite, or if at that point collegiate athletics and college football does move into an entire pro model, the model that we've talked about on this show for 5 years, where it looks a lot like the AFC and the NFC in football. And there are, 40 teams involved in that ecosystem. You have 2 conferences of 20 apiece or whatever. If Utah gets the invite to be a part of that, a 1.2 to 1.8 valuation will be completely low. Like maybe low by like $1 billion, dude. I'm serious about that. When you look at the valuations of certain pro teams, when you look at the valuations of what college teams will be able to garner if this new reality becomes what we're all kind of presented with, that's the one element of this that I honestly wonder if Utah undervalued the potential of what their football program and athletic department could be worth down the road. We'll do more on this because we have Kyle Bonagura. He's going to join us coming up on the other side of a quick break. Sam Bruckhaus to preview the weekend ahead of pro football that starts tonight with a little Thursday Night Football. Dr. Chris Hill is live in studio. We are busy and jam-packed on a Thursday, and it's good to have you with us on ESPN 700. So if I inhale either Clorox or Lysol, is there a danger? Like you might have to pay closer attention than you usually do. If I just faint in here, can you be ready to call the ambulance?
I got you. I will.
All right. Yeah, we're disinfecting the studio today for reasons that will remain off air. About 15 minutes before we signed off last night, news broke that Sharon Moore had been fired by the University of Michigan. And then as I'm on my way home, I get the alert from ESPN that he was in police custody. He will be arraigned tomorrow, and it escalated very, very quickly. Our next guest covers college football for ESPN, the great Kyle Bonagura. So I guess never a dull moment in this weird sport, yeah?
Yeah, I mean, you always expect for there to be one surprise coaching change, like when you think the carousel has stopped spinning. It's, usually from the NFL or something like that, or a surprise, retirement. You don't expect it to be something like what we saw yesterday in Michigan, where Sharon Moore is first fired and then ends up in jail at the end of the day, or detained, or whatever it looks like at the end of the day.
So give us the latest as you know it, and kind of how we got here, and help us understand what you think comes next.
Yeah, so there's a lot of moving pieces here, and a lot of it's coming in very quickly. So, I mean, I guess the basics of it, right, are that, it's announced yesterday, midday or kind of late morning here on the West Coast, that Moore was fired by the University of Michigan for cause, meaning it wasn't because they went 9-3 and haven't really looked as up to the Jim Harbaugh standards. Fired for cause, and it came out that he had an inappropriate relationship with a university employee. It appears to be, it appears to be someone who worked directly for him, according to several reports, without having it personally verified myself, right? And that was the end of the line for Moore. But apparently, what happens after that is, he's having some mental health issues, and apparently, there is for whatever transpired, it's still unconfirmed. So I'm a little hesitant to kind of say that I know this for fact. It's out there for people to kind of look into, but enough happened behind the scenes for the police to be brought in, for him to be detained, to him to be held overnight, and now he is going to appear in court on Friday for an arraignment. There's allegations of assault. I think there's some suggestions of possible self-harm in the mix as well. It's just a mess, and it's also just one of the more, not only is it a mess, it's like one of the more fascinating days I can remember following a story and just seeing how quickly it can change over the course of 10, 15 minutes at a time.
So I think I read he has like 15 to 16 mil left on his contract, and obviously the language of firing for cause and then violating literally the university and their bylaws and policies. Is there any chance he sees any of this? I mean, this is such, as the kids would say, man, he fumbled the bag hard, because it's not about just losing a job. It's about losing the millions that are left owed to you. And I haven't heard from his wife. My guess is she's not thrilled about the entire situation. Like on the scale of epically blowing something, this has to be right up there with anything we could think of when it comes to the way he has absolutely botched not his job, but potentially his life. I mean, I would imagine he would lawyer up to try to recoup some of those funds, but does he have even a leg to stand on there at all?
Yeah, I mean, it seems pretty clear that he violated the university policy and like the morals clause and all of that. And look, I think his response that he ended up in jail at the end of the day, detained by police, probably a pretty good sign that, something is not right there. I mean, it is funny though, because it's like, what's the best? How far back do we have to think about something where a coach lost their job over sexual impropriety or something adjacent? And like Mel Tucker at Michigan State just a couple of years ago also fumbled the bag. I mean, these are both guys who Tucker, I think he had several more millions left on his contract. But I think to your question, I don't think he'll recoup that money. I think he's probably more concerned with staying out of jail at this point, considering how that day progressed.
So as far as, I mean, I think the name everybody, kind of landed on right away was Kalen DeBoer, who has a pretty decent job in Tuscaloosa. Jesse Winter is the Chargers defensive coordinator who was there with Harbaugh, but he has a show cause on him still. I'm not laughing because it's funny. I'm laughing because it's ridiculous. And then Jed Fish, who's the coach of UW, who was at Michigan as well. Where does Michigan go from here, and how do they avoid getting Penn Stated?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, with DeBoer, I think for me, DeBoer makes sense in that, like, Michigan should be interested in DeBoer, but, like, I just don't know why DeBoer would be interested in Michigan at that point. Yeah, it hasn't gone kind of according to plan, right, at Alabama so far, but, you know, he's in the middle of preparing for the playoffs. Maybe if they lose, I guess it changes the dynamic a little bit, but look, it's still you know, they play next week. Say they win their first game, they beat Oklahoma. Like that's a while to wait for a guy who's not a guarantee. Like that doesn't seem realistic for me. I just don't know why Kalen would want to leave for Michigan. Michigan's just been a mess up and down for several years now with everything that's going on, and that would really surprise me. I mean, the other options are, I mean, like you said, moving from Washington, I don't think would be like for Jed to leave Washington to go back to Michigan. He was also on that Harbaugh staff for a little while. I could see that happening. I mean, he jumped quick from Arizona because it's a kind of a step up. Michigan would obviously be, you know, a step up in terms of prestige nationally for him. Does he want to start over again so quickly to jump into that toxic situation in Michigan? You know, maybe. The money also speaks, right? He'll certainly would command more in Ann Arbor than he does currently in Seattle. But if you're Washington or if you're Michigan, right, is it like, does that satisfy the fan base? Like, is Jed Fish going to be the guy who you can sell to your alumni and your donors and say, hey, we're back. We're going to start competing for national titles again immediately? I don't think that's the case. I think Jed's a very good coach, and Washington should be competitive in the Big Ten for a while, but they haven't been great the last 2 years. There was certainly a little bit of a rebuild there when Kalen left, and you have to kind of level set to an extent. They lost some players to Alabama and all of that, but it's not, you know, they haven't been a serious threat in the conference so far. So like the immediate satisfaction of what he did there, it would have to be it would be a similar type of situation going to Michigan. So I don't know, that for me doesn't seem like a hire that would satisfy the fans. And how do they avoid Penn State? Then you start, it gets dicey, right? Because the timing, it's so difficult to make a good hire when the timing is what it is. Obviously all the big, you know, Penn State is in a similar spot in that it would certainly appeal to the same sorts of candidates. But is like Clark Lee going to leave for Michigan if he wasn't going to leave for Penn State, live in Vanderbilt? Like Cignetti's not going to leave Indiana right now. I mean, who else passes the test? It's an interesting question. I know I was looking at Adam Rittenberg's kind of list of possibilities, and I was like, wow, they're in a tough spot because like none of these like seemingly realistic options are guys that are like no doubt, yeah, this is the obvious choice. That one would be interested in, two would be like satisfactory for the fans.
On the scale of, you know, we talked about this after Lane Kiffin took the LSU job and said, in his opinion, it's the best job in America. Where does Michigan lie? Generally speaking, I'm not asking you for like, hey, top 10, tweet at us. I'm just like, generally speaking, what sort of job is Michigan as a result of everything that's already gone down?
Yes, I think, I mean, it's up there. I mean, I would say, you know, if you're doing it in tiers, like I think it's a tier one job. I mean, they just won the national title a couple of years ago. And I think that's how you kind of, like, I think there's different ways to how to answer that. Is that one is like, I think it's generally accepted as like, what places are you best positioned to win a national title, right? And like, you know, they're certainly in the mix because they just did it. It can be done. There's history there. There's resources. There's a stadium. They're in a power conference. They have a recruiting base, right? They check all the boxes for being right there at the top. And now whether it's better than Texas or Georgia, I don't know. I think at that point it becomes more of a personal preference deal. Like, you know, Michigan for Jim Harbaugh was the best job because it gave him all the opportunities to win a national title, and he had the personal connection. But for Kirby Smart, you know, that place is Georgia. Nick Saban, it ended up being a couple of places, but Alabama was certainly like the place that he would have never left. And so, yeah, I think can he win a national title is the number one question to ask when we're talking about best job. And I think it's in the mix. So. But again, like personal preference, fit, those sort of things, and that's why there's not really an obvious guy right now.
There seemed to be this narrative around Sharon Moore because the reality is, even without, and I cannot say without what's happened over the past 24 hours because that's clearly the most damning thing about him, but there was the recruiting show cause. You can roll your eyes on that because apparently they were talking to recruits during COVID and Harbaugh bought him cheeseburgers or something. Harbaugh was suspended. Sharon Moore was suspended as a result of his involvement with the Connor Stallions sign stealing thing. And then just a general kind of narrative among a lot of fans that maybe he was a step down from Harbaugh, who might be the best football coach in the game, let alone college or pro. So maybe that's not entirely fair. But what was just sort of the general sentiment about Sharon Moore prior to the chaos that's happened over the past 24 hours?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think he ever had. I mean, he has this reputation, or had this reputation, as like this up and comer, right? A guy who was moving through the landscape quickly. You know, Harbaugh really liked him, and if you know Harbaugh likes you, that carries some weight, right? I think it was almost like he was the recommendation to take over after they had so much success, and I think it skews it a little bit, right? Because when you have as much success as Michigan had, you want to kind of like keep the momentum going, like stick to what worked. And because they won the national title and then lost their coach, which is just a strange dynamic in the first place, you kind of look inward. I mean, it worked for Stanford when Harbaugh left to go to the 49ers. They hired David Shaw, who had a nice run, so kind of just keeping things as close to the status quo as possible. But there was enough change at Michigan where it wasn't the same program. Yeah, like you pointed, there's the cheating scandal, of course, was a big part of that. And then the other part is like, Ohio State being the rival and had dominated that rivalry for so long. And then when Michigan finally swung it, I think Sharon Moore was looked at as, hey, he was part of the crew that ended the streak against Ohio State. That carries weight there. But I think kind of lost all in this, and maybe not totally. I think it's catching some momentum today. Is Ward Manuel probably shouldn't be the athletic director at Michigan anymore. Like, how many scandals can one athletic department endure before you point the finger at the guy who sits atop the entire org chart? I mean, it was reported today that Ward Manuel was aware of this relationship that Sharon Moore had with this staffer as far back as the summer. And it's interesting that they weren't able to finally pull the plug on it until yesterday. What does that say about his leadership? If he was the investigation, did they not push hard enough? Was he aware? Like, there's a lot of other questions that I think he has to answer to. And given the level of embarrassment this time around, he kind of had his second chance to kind of navigate in the wake of the cheating scandal. And now with another one, he hired Sharon Moore. He was the one who made that decision. Should he be given another opportunity? Probably not. And so then what do you do? Who hires the coach at that point, and how does that change the timing of everything?
All right. Big news around these parts this week, Kyle, where I think initially it was Ross Dellinger from Yahoo, and then, of course, you guys picked up on it, and Dan Wetzel's written about it. The guys at The Athletic have covered it. And you and I have discussed the potential of private equity making its way into college football for a long time, and wasn't sure who would be first to the table. Thought it might be a conference, as the Big Ten appeared to be close to it. Then Brett Yormark reportedly was into it. Well, it turns out that it's going to be a team first to the table, and that team plays their football a mile and a half where you and I are talking right now, as the University of Utah has struck a deal with Otro Capital, a New York-based sports private equity firm. As you can imagine, it's been the driving topic on the show all week. Dr. Chris Hill will join us, who was the AD up there for a number of years in a little bit. But what's your initial reaction to this, and any thoughts on what it means for the football program and the athletic department here in Utah?
Yeah, I think the kind of gut reaction here is this is interesting, right? It's new, it's different. Whether it's good or bad, I just don't have a great sense of that yet, because I am skeptical that it's going to be a game changer over, like, it obviously infusion of cash is big, and maybe there's some noteworthy differences right away, but I'm also a little bit skeptical to kind of buy into the idea that, look, these guys know how to do this better than the people who have been doing it, right? I mean, there's some I guess it's Otro Capital is this organization that they're in partnership with now, and I was reading about some of the executives. They have some interesting interesting CVs working in different facets of competitive sports. A lot of, NFL guys, some international soccer stuff, F1 I saw. So there's like a lot of complex backgrounds that people can maybe bring some new ideas to the table. But again, like, is it going to be? Are you going to unlock something so new and revolutionary that Utah couldn't have done by itself? I don't necessarily think that's really the case. Maybe you're able to streamline some things, but how much of a difference will that really make? Time will tell. I think it's the money that they're getting up front that they're able to, put towards different projects that will kind of jumpstart things. And they're hoping that, like, if they're able to add this investment, then over time, maybe they'll speed up where they are in terms of where they operate. So super fascinating. I need to do a lot more reading and talking to people about the specifics of it and where to look for change immediately over the next couple of years. But it's certainly fascinating, especially because it's Utah, a team a school that I follow very closely. So it's certainly something that I'll be probably doing quite a bit of reporting on here in the next couple of months.
So the reports are initially, and nobody really seems to know exactly how much money is coming in right away and how much will come over time. But the understanding most people have out here is that the Utah Athletic Department has to service a significant amount of debt, and that's what the money will be used for initially. And then maybe some arena upgrades, some stadium upgrades. The Huntsman Center needs to be upgraded worse than my 1913 Sugar House bungalow. I mean, there's so many things they have to do to that arena. And then Rice Eccles could probably use a little touch up here or there. But in the course of kind of learning about this and the reporting of a lot of really smart college football people, you start to learn that Utah is far from the only athletic department that has serious debt, namely Ohio State, who made about $260 million last year and reported a debt of $37 million. And that's just the tip of the iceberg. We could list most. I don't know if most is accurate, but it appears, Kyle, that college athletics doesn't have a revenue-generating problem, but they have a spending problem. When you look at the numbers, I mean, the Big Ten, for the better part of 15 years, has been essentially going about their business of poaching teams and killing leagues in the name of just generating revenue for their conference only, and they're out of money. Like, they're talking to private equity. Your thoughts on this? Like, the spending issue in college athletics seems to be what's getting in the way, not the generating revenue issue.
It feels like we've heard that there's a money issue for a decade, maybe even longer, and yet coaching salaries continue to increase. Now you have the NIL component that requires significant investment. I mean, Rice Eccles had a major renovation, not that long ago, and that's common at a lot of places where they're spending $10s, $50, $100 million or more on stadium improvements that come from various fees and whatnot. But yeah, look, I think it's very clear that they don't need this money. They just want to spend. And there's this idea that you have to keep up with the guy next to you in order to be competitive, which I'm not really sure is the case. I think that I think NIL has changed everything. Because I think when it was, hey, we need to have a nicer stadium, we need to have nicer locker rooms, we need to have all these amenities to help appeal to athletes during the recruiting process, like that for me made a lot of sense. But now that NIL is far and away the most significant factor in luring some of these top recruits, I think like how nice your locker room is probably as not important as it was, 6, 7, 10 years ago, right? And so a lot of that money and those resources have to be diverted. And so if you don't have a nice locker room, but you're fully funded with NIL and you're doing everything you can to make sure that your roster is as good as possible, I think, because that's the number one factor, right, in terms of generating revenue on the back end is like, are you winning games? And you're winning games if you're investing in your roster. And I think it's become very straightforward in that sense. It's very much more like a pro model than it was before. And so all of that makes this so complex because if you're adding this private equity money with the goal of what, to make more money or to win more games, is it all tied up into one pot? Like, how do you, like, where are the priorities? And again, for me, it's not really clear, but certainly Utah and other places have a spending issue. Cal's been in debt for a long time, not because of spending for things that they don't need, but they had to do a massive stadium earthquake retrofit, right? So there's a lot of different factors that are in play here. So again, we keep hearing about money issues, and yet it seems like they continue to spend more money exponentially year after year.
All right, Kyle, before I set you loose, we are just weeks away now from the World Cup. And if you're a fan of the U.S. men's national team, I'm not sure that you could be more happy with this draw. Now, there are a lot more teams. And so, when you look across the landscape of the groups, and lots has been written about this, as a result of kind of the oversaturated nature of how many teams are in the tournament, there doesn't appear to be, and I know soccer fans hate when you use the term group of death, but typically that's been a thing that you look at and maybe it's England, Croatia, Ghana, Panama. I think that's getting the most attention. But the U.S. finds themselves in Group D, along with Paraguay and Australia, two teams they've played recently and beaten, and then the winner of Playoff Path C. And I'm not going to pretend I'm smashing tape on Turkey soccer, so I don't know who that's going to be. But based off of what we know now, what should be a reasonable expectation for the U.S. men's national team in the World Cup?
Yes, I had a sense that it was going to be like this. The numbers it was the amount of teams, like you said, like it was going to water down the group. So it was never a question of like, could they or should they get through the group? Like, well, there isn't a group in here. If you swap a pot A team with the United States, where the expectation wouldn't have been to get through, it's about getting further than you ever had before, right? And so it wasn't even about getting through the round of 32. I mean, if you look at last World Cup, they made it to the round of 16 and tough draw against the Netherlands. So for me, that's the starting point. Okay, 16 is like, that's the bare minimum to be like, hey, this is about probably where the United States should fall. If, 9 times out of 10, that's probably like where they probably deserve to be is the round of 16. And I think that's the case again here, just in terms of, they're not one of the best 8 teams in the world, right? But they're also not, but I think on home soil, 16 is the baseline. So if you advance past that, I think it's a success. If you don't get to the round of 16, it's a failure. And I think, 16 is just right. I think being at home makes it, heightens expectations a bit, in that you should kind of out-punch your weight class a bit. And if you can get a favorable draw, the quarterfinals would be an overwhelming success, because it would match the best finish they've had in a modern World Cup.
Well, excited for it. It's going to be fun to have it in the region. Are you going to try to get to any matches?
Still to be determined if I'm going to be involved in, or if or how I'll be involved in our coverage this time around, or if I'll just try to go see games as a fan. We got some time to figure that stuff out, but certainly we'll be paying very close attention, however that plays out.
All right, man. Thanks for the time. Have a great weekend. We'll chat soon.
Sounds good. See you.
Kyle Bonagura covers college football and soccer for ESPN. He's on Twitter at Bonagura. ESPN is where you find him. ESPN 700 and the Rocky Mountain Chevy dealers invite you to help those at the road home this holiday season with needed blankets, coats, shoes, hats, and gloves. Drop off donations at any Rocky Mountain Chevy dealer. Visit ESPN700sports.com for dealer locations. Spread the warmth and help others find their way home, and join us at the Midvale Road Home Mediathon on December the 18th through the 19th. Going to preview the weekend ahead in the world of pro football. Coming up with Sam Bruckhouse, could Phillip Rivers really start for the Colts on Sunday? Thursday Night Football tonight is the Falcons and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So Sam will stop by. Don't forget, Dr. Chris Hill live in studio for an entire hour starting at 3:30 today. A lot to do. Busy Thursday show. Good to have you with us on ESPN 700. Got a little Thursday night football tonight to start your weekend in the NFL. We'll have a little Tampa Bay, Atlanta. Really good slate, though. Really good slate. Excited for the weekend ahead in the NFL. But we have to welcome in our favorite Tulane alum who might have some bragging to do today. Hello, Sam Broadcast. How are you, sir?
I'm doing good. I'm doing a lot better that the Green Wave are making their first college football playoff appearance. And, I think we have as many as Louisiana State University right now. So I'm not here to say we may be Louisiana's top dog, but I think at least as it stands now, we are.
I think you should take that moniker, quite frankly. On a serious note, help us understand how big of a deal this is for a program like Tulane that, historically speaking, has not existed in this ecosystem.
I think it means a ton, obviously, but I think it's more of a testament to the investment and the innovation of what Tulane has done. Tulane basically, about 4 or 5 years ago, ironically, after a pretty tough hurricane in southeast Louisiana, which put most of the team staying in an under-construction hotel in Birmingham, Alabama for about 4 months, they sat down and tried to figure out how they were going to rebuild a program that was 2-10. And they looked at the structures of NIL and the way that the G5, P5 split works, and they decided that they were going to have one of the most professional outfits, both in-house and outside of house with the collective when it comes to NIL, that they were going to make smart coaching decisions. Obviously, that's a little bit of a roll of dice, but John Sumrall worked out. That was a guy who was previously at Tulane, understood the culture of New Orleans. They now move on to Will Hall, who coached me. I owe a ton. He understands Tulane. He understands how to recruit there. And I think the operation of what Tulane has done, and to other degrees, Utah, for example, BYU, Texas Tech, some of these teams who aren't necessarily absolute powerhouses look at their situation, and because of how the NCAA has kind of managed itself lately, they're able to find a niche and able to win really big and be able to consistently win. I think that Tulane is kind of just a program that will run itself. Obviously, there may be some down years, but at this point, they have the backing, they have the boosting, they have the people in the right places. You're going to be able to get talent there now, and I think that's more of a testament to the process than necessarily just 1 or 2 good years.
And look, Ole Miss is a 17.5-point favorite, but look, like they lose their coach. I think Charlie Weiss Jr. is going to go back and call plays, and obviously Tulane's a big-time underdog, but I think on the James Madison is like a 22-point dog. It could have been worse, right? Like, how do they keep this close and maybe shock the world?
Yeah, I think this is our best matchup from a structural perspective. And ironically, I think for Tulane, it's very opposite of what Ole Miss is. Ole Miss, from a high-level perspective, is kind of fractured and there's a lot of chaos. And Tulane's kind of in the same position. However, they've kind of rallied together and made this almost like the last dance, where John Sumrall is in Gainesville right now, I believe, but Will Hall, the new head coach who is on staff, is running the ship. Also, player-led practices. They know what to do. A bunch of those guys are going to transfer out. Look, like I'm not the wiser there. I know how this game goes nowadays, and I think us banding together off the field as an ex-player means a lot more. It's going to be interesting to see how Ole Miss, and particularly on those scripted plays, like you mentioned, how they're going to look. Because if they don't look good on those scripted plays, if we're able to take advantage of them in the first 15 to 20 plays of the game, I think we have a real shot of winning that game if we get up about 14. Now, they are more talented than us. Trinidad Chambly, the quarterback, has played extremely well this year. Our weakness on offense is their weakness on defense, so not really a place to take advantage of them there in terms of the run game. And their offense is just very good. The question becomes, is that Lane Kiffin or is that the offensive coordinator? Or is that the team? Is it everything firing on the same wavelength? So typically, I like to pick out one thing that I want to watch and I think it's going to take away. I think it's those scripted plays, the first 20, 25 plays of the game on both sides. If we are able to get 7 to 10 points and hold them on one of their drives, I think this could be a very, very good matchup for the Wave.
Look, Sam, as a man in his mid-40s, and I'll say mid-40s, I think I have one more year till I have to lean into the late 40s. I am hoping to see Phillip Rivers start at quarterback for the Indianapolis Colts coming up this Sunday. For all of us that are aging and believe that maybe we still have some gas left in the tank, it would be quite a story. Is it really, do you think it's really a possibility that he gets the call to start for the Colts coming up against Jacksonville on Sunday?
It seems to be, for the reason that it seems like they have nobody else who wants to come play for him. There were talks of Sam Ehlinger allegedly being considered to be grabbed off the practice squad. He remains on the Broncos. Leonard is hurt. Richardson is hurt. Jones is hurt. So it seems as if in a pinch, a 3-day kind of loop, he is their best option. The problem is, when I was analyzing the Colts like 5 or 6 weeks ago, I was looking at their schedule. I was looking at the trends of their team. And Daniel Jones could have been completely healthy. I still thought that they were going to lose out. They go up against the Seahawks team that is venomous and dangerous and angry for most games. And I don't know if that's the best standpoint for a 44-year-old quarterback who is hopping off of the headset down there with his kids and now jumping into a helmet and playing against one of the most just absolutely beast defenses in the National Football League, frankly, that we've seen in a couple of years. They shut Matt Stafford down, who's around that age, quite easily, and Matt Stafford might be the MVP. I don't think it's going to look great for Phillip Rivers if he steps on the field, but I got to say, that man has some he has some fortitude, let's say that. And he's clearly a gamer. He's been that his whole career. So he's going to try to make it happen. But I don't think it's going to look great for the Colts offense if he is a major part of the game plan.
There are a lot of awesome games this weekend. I don't know that tonight's one of them, but, it's on our radio station, so I should be kind about the product. Baker Mayfield's had a rough month or so. The Falcons are eliminated from the postseason. What's the most intriguing thing to you about Falcons-Bucks Thursday Night Football?
Yeah, I think you got to look at this game in the kind of slug race when it really comes down to it. Neither of these teams are fantastic as it stands right now. Between Tampa Bay and Carolina is really interesting. Carolina has been doing it with defense in the running game. Tampa, like you said, Baker has been immensely banged up. Frankly, most of their team has been immensely banged up throughout the season. What Atlanta has been able to do is make big plays on defense, and sometimes that looks great, and then sometimes it looks awful. If they're able to get the big plays against Baker, I think they take this victory. I really want to look at what that wide receiver room looks like. I think the Bucs team, for better or worse, has the core pillars of a good team. They have 2 good tackles. They have multiple good wide receivers, 2 good running backs, good play caller, a quarterback who, when healthy, has some juice and some good pieces on defense. I think they just have to take this game as one where they can get over on somebody, and I don't know exactly if they're going to be able to do that. I think it could be a tough matchup for them tonight.
All right, let's move over to some of the more exciting matchups. Let's do Chargers-Chiefs because, of course, everybody wants to know what's up with the Chiefs, and I believe the playoff percentage at this point is 12%. So if they don't get it done coming up tomorrow morning, they're probably cooked, and the Chargers are a really solid team. They got Omarion Hampton back last week. So two-pronged question, your thoughts on the game and what ultimately has gone south for what really has been a dynasty for the better part of 6-7 years now.
My thoughts on the game really tie into my thoughts on this team, that the team seems to be coming together except for a few back-breaking plays that last year went their way literally every single time. And when you are a dynasty, when you are a top team in the league, you play a difficult schedule. That's how the NFL works. And they are in a difficult division as well. And so you got to have some of those breaks, and I think this is just the year from heck for the Kansas City Chiefs. If you were to go look at what we as analysts like to call the Pythagorean win theory, which looks at point differential, other people use it using EPA, and there's multiple different models. But the Chiefs, you would expect them to be one of the best teams in the league. But they just have had terrible bounces, missed field goals, tight games that they weren't able to win, so forth and so on. Trevor Lawrence falling on his butt, being able to get back up and score a touchdown in the close game. So this is a really anomalous year. You look at the Chiefs offense, they're 5th in expected points added per play. Their defense looked really good last week and basically got them back into the game. And I think that's the key standpoint against the Chargers, who have just been able to win games. That's what Jim Harbaugh does. He wins games. It's looked pretty gnarly. But when it comes down to it, if Kansas City's defensive line is able to recreate the performance that they had last week where it looked like everyone was getting shot out of a cannon over and over again, I think they should take this game because Justin Herbert is immensely banged up and they have little to no talent on that offensive line right now, or at least it's tough to get that O-line ready, I'll say. And I think if they're able to take advantage of Justin Herbert in a way that shockingly we saw the Eagles do, but they weren't able to really drill it down on the other side of the ball, I think the Chiefs are going to be able to get it done on the other side of the ball. So I like the Chiefs in this game.
Don't know that anybody really wants to win that AFC North. And tomorrow we've got Ravens-Bengals. Ravens have lost a couple of straight games after it looked like they were just going to roll through and get the thing. And the Bengals have Burrow back, and they're basically dead, but Monty Python not dead yet dead. So what do you make of this matchup?
This is a tough one. I think you look at that output of the Bengals on offense, and that is going to stress a defense that has been really inconsistent all year, whether that's analytically or just by the eye test. And I think that this is going to have to need to be a high-scoring game if the Ravens want to win. We haven't seen the Ravens being able to put up high-scoring games. I think Lamar is pretty banged up. I think we're going to hear after the season that he's dealing with multiple injuries. We're not seeing the athleticism on our tracking data that we have seen in previous years from Lamar. It's showing up in his rushing statistics. It's showing up in his scramble statistics. And I think, you got to score when you're going up against Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase. T. Higgins, I believe, is in concussion protocol, so that's going to be a major loss for them. But when it comes down to it, this needs to be a high-scoring game for the Ravens to win, and I frankly don't know if they're going to be able to do it.
All right, Bills-Patriots. Every weekend you kind of wait for the Patriots to come back down to earth. You've been good to remind us of kind of the topsy-turvy nature of the Bills during the regular season. Then they just kind of end up figuring it out. But we sit here at this point, and I don't know how many people called this. If anybody did, I didn't read it or hear about it, with the Patriots with a commanding lead in the AFC East. We'll talk about your Dolphins a little bit because you need a little love for your boy Mike McDaniel, but what do you make of a massive AFC East clash here?
We got vintage Josh Allen last week. Yep. And I got to say, whether you look at the advanced statistics where his expected points added is very good, however, he does not have like the sheer reps that he's had in previous years. They actually haven't asked him to do a lot. When you look at what he's really done on the field via our Sumer scores, which look at every 10th of a second on a play and try to make an evaluation by learning the relationships between all the players, he has had just like a quality starter season. We're not seeing an MVP season from him. I do think he will end up making the Pro Bowl. And we discussed that on our Pro Bowl Sumer Sports show this week. And I got to say, shockingly, there are a lot of Patriots who are playing good. I think Drake May is the MVP this year. If I had a vote, I would be voting for Drake May for MVP. They have guys across the offensive line, Morgan Moses, Mike Onwenu, who are playing extremely well. They got guys across the defensive backfield that are playing really well. Jalen Hawkins at the safety position. This is just a team who has been able to put players in the right place over and over and over again this year. And as a result, I really think they are a true contender. I think there's a lot of value in them as the Super Bowl champion if you want to go check out those odds. I think there's a lot of value, and I think people look at the Bills and look at the Chiefs, who may not even make the playoffs, but if some of those other AFC teams catch the breaks that I expect them to break downward, this is the Patriots' cakewalk to the Super Bowl. I think that's definitely in the odds. Now, my Dolphins, as you mentioned, all of a sudden winning games, offense is starting to creep up. Andy Weaver's defense is starting to creep up. Do I think they're for real? No. I think they're probably an average team that can give pretty much any team in the league problems due to their scheme advantage with Anthony Weaver and Mike McDaniel. So I think this is a Patriots cakewalk, and I think the Patriots are going to pull it out. I think they're going to really test that nickel defense of the Buffalo Bills, and I just don't think they're going to be able to hang with them for 4 quarters.
You think McDaniel has saved his job? I mean, you joined us about a month and a half ago when there was all this noise around him, and you made a very interesting case for why he should be retained. It felt at one point people were talking about it like in the past tense, like, hey, he'll be great at his next opportunity. But winning 4 straight, you think he's kind of saved his gig?
Yeah, I just don't know how they can get rid of him. I feel like he's going to get hired as an offense coordinator or head coach immediately. And when you have a guy in the room like that, particularly if you are considering looking for a quarterback or need someone to make Tua Tagovailoa usable, there's not a better guy that will be available this year than Mike McDaniel. And I think that's a real underrated story going into this offseason, is that there's not a lot of clear head coaching candidates. I think you think of Shula with the Rams, maybe Jesse Minter with the Chargers, but the offensive coordinator pool right now is mostly guys who have been retreads. I think Joe Brady's the only one who has not been a head coach, but he has been fired from the Panthers, ends up going to the Bills, having some success. Clint Kubiak has been the offensive coordinator for several different situations. Brian Daboll just got fired as a head coach. There's just not a lot of great there's not a lot of great offensive young talent in the coaching pool right now. Cliff Kingsbury is another name who has come up. He's bounced around the league, fired as a head coach, now an offensive coordinator for a team that's struggling but keeping themselves alive offensively to a certain degree. And so I just don't think it makes sense for a team that has a clear scheme advantage every single week, both on offense and on defense with Andy Weaver, to go a different direction. The scenario has changed. My previous argument was that if they are going to be a terrible team, you want to bring a quarterback into that situation. I think now it becomes, if you are bringing a mid-first round, mid-second or third round quarterback into a situation where potentially he can take over for Tua Tagovailoa via injury or just via poor performance, I still think you want Mike McDaniel to man that ship.
Got a cross-conference matchup at Mile High that will be very highly watched in our market, with Jordan Love and the Green Bay Packers taking on Bo Nix and the Denver Broncos, who have won 10 straight games. A lot of excitement about the Broncos. And, of course, Jordan played his college ball about 40 miles north of here. Two teams that are high speed ahead of the postseason, maybe playing for a bye. What do you like most about Packers-Broncos?
I think the matchup to watch in this game is Keyshawn Nixon versus Cortland Sutton. We have Keyshawn Nixon as one of the best cornerbacks in the league this year, according to our Sumer scores, and Cortland Sutton is a borderline Pro Bowler, according to our metrics. And I think it's really going to come down to that matchup. If Cortland Sutton is able to get open quickly, especially with a defense that is extremely good at getting pressure, I don't think they're going to be able to sack Bo Nix. As usual, Bo Nix never gets sacked, one of the best sack-avoiding quarterbacks in the league. Frankly, the entire engine of that offense, quite literally. But if Cortland Sutton's able to get open, have a big game against Keyshawn Nixon, I think that this game could open up in a way that we don't really expect from the Broncos. Now, do I think that's necessarily going to happen? I don't know. Bo Nix, it's still up to him to be accurate and hit him. We haven't seen him play super well in past weeks, even though the results have been good. I think Jordan Love probably is going to have a couple Jordan Love plays against this terrifying defense, and their offensive line really struggled to have an identity through most of this year. They've kind of found it in the last 2 weeks, but this is a whole nother beast in the Broncos defense. So I think it's really going to come down to the Broncos offense, particularly Cortland Sutton, the wide receiver group, to win this game. Frankly, I think this is going to be a defensive lockup rather than an offensive lockup that you would expect between a LaFleur and Peyton coach team.
Last game that I'll set you loose, and these are two of my favorite teams to watch when they're ticking, with the Lions and the Rams at SoFi and Inglewood. Ultimately, again, two teams that are probably high speed of the playoffs. The Rams are among the favorites to win the Super Bowl now. So what do you like most about what should be a really entertaining game in Los Angeles?
There's a couple items to this, and it's kind of like this every time the Rams play, where there's these unique matchups because they are such a good team, and on the flip side, the Lions are very good as well, of like there's always one strange matchup that always pops up. And so I think if they're able to keep Matt Stafford clean in this game in a way that they were not able to do against the Seahawks, I think we could see the Rams play really well, but that's a big if. Aiden Hutchinson right now is playing at a certified player of the year caliber. They've been able to get pressure that Lions defense has from multiple spots, including from the linebacker position. And interestingly, this team likes to trot out 11 and 13 personnel. That is where the Rams like to live. Ironically, separate from what the Seahawks did to them, the Lions like to stay in base personnel. They want to play Derek Barnes, they want to play Jack Campbell, and they want to play Alex Anzalone at all times. I think that could give the 13 personnel attack trouble. I think it's going to be a true 11 game from the Rams. That means that Puka Nacua is going to have to step out. He'll be against the depth of the Lions secondary, which once again, tons of injuries in that secondary. So I think that's going to be really interesting. Can Aiden Hutchinson get one-on-one pressure against this offensive line? I think it'll end up being a close game if he can. On the flip side, they're going to trot out dime against an interior offensive line of the Lions that has struggled throughout this year. They're going to have to pass over the middle to win this game. The Rams have one of the best safety groups in recent years, including Cameron Curl, a couple other guys, Cam Kitchens that has played really well, Nate Landman, the linebacker, as well. It's going to be a struggle to pass over the middle. This is a true strength-on-strength game, and that's why I think it's going to be fascinating to watch.
Sam, before I set you loose, I'm going to be selfish, and I'm going to ask you for fantasy football advice because I'm in the playoffs. Are you ready?
Let's hear it.
All right. I'm in a 2-quarterback league, and Dak is my quarterback that I'll start. And then I was playing Daniel Jones, who is obviously hurt. So my options for my second quarterback are Cam Ward or whoever starts for the Colts. Who should I go with?
Oh, you don't have any other options?
No, man. And there's none on the waiver wire. It's a bad spot. It's a bad spot.
That's brutal. Well, look, I mean, you got to think about it. I don't think there's any good matchup against the Seahawks that I'd like. And I think Cam Ward and the Titans are likely to be put in a situation where they could be throwing just because they don't have a high team strength. So based off of those sheer principles, I'm going to go with Cam Ward. I'm really, frankly, afraid of anyone playing against the Seahawks defense. It could be Josh Allen. It could be Phillip Rivers. I trust that Mike McDonald is going to give a quarterback troubles.
Wait, we have a late entry into this group. Kenny Pickett is available on the waiver wire. What do you think?
Oh, that's an interesting one. Kenny Pickett may bring a little bit of rushing upside. Now, we have not seen that from the Raiders offense at all.
Nope.
But, yeah, I think I'm still going to have to go Cam Ward on this one.
Oh, man, I don't know why I play fantasy.
Brutal, man.
It's so brutal. It's so brutal. But we'll see what happens. Hey, Sam, tell everybody where they can go find your work, bud.
Yeah, go check out the Sumer Sports Show on YouTube, and be sure to subscribe. We also have had some excellent daily film videos from our film expert, Sean Syed. If you want to figure out how Michael Parsons is getting his pressure, how some of these excellent NFL coaches are scheming up their offenses, every single day you can catch a video. And as well, you can catch Sumer Sports Show. We helped you fill out your Pro Bowl ballot this week, so great thing to do as you're doing that.
Sam, thank you, my friend. Enjoy the football. Enjoy the weekend. We'll chat soon.
Thank you so much.
Sam Bruckhouse, one of our favorites from Sumer Sports, previewing the pro football weekend ahead. It starts tonight in Tampa between the Falcons and the Bucs. Of course, you can see that game on Amazon Prime, and we are your home of the NFL in this market. Speaking of football, we've got a football special, a holiday football special with our friends at Advanced Window Products. Our guy, Nate Orchard, his buddy, Jake Weber. They run this company, and they're the best at what they do. Been working with them for a long time, done a bunch of remotes at their spot, and you can trust them. That's number one. Number two is if you're in need of new windows, they're offering savings of $3,500 when you buy 10 windows or more. That's right, $3,500 when you buy 10 windows or more. It's very mild and warm, but the cold weather's on its way. And if you've noticed that your house gets a little bit colder while you're at work, even though if you have the heater up, you come home and it's cold, your kids are cold, it's probably because of your window quality. So take advantage of the special. Save $3,500 when you buy 10 windows or more with this local Salt Lake company operated by a guy, Nate Orchard, the mayor of Sac Lake City and former NFL player. Give them a call today at 801-850-9100. That's 801-850-9100, 801-850-9100, or visit advancedwindows.com. All right, one of my favorite guests, Dr. Chris Hill, former athletic director for the Utes, will join us coming up for an entire hour. We've got an intriguing edition of Sports Court for you guys before we get into the 5 o'clock hour of the program. A lot to do on a Thursday show, and it's good to have you with us right here on ESPN 700. Here we go. One of my favorite guests live in studio for an entire hour. Former athletic director of the University of Utah and a good friend of the show, Dr. Chris Hill, is live on a Thursday. Happy Thursday, sir. How are you?
I'm doing great. I mean, you'll be jealous, but I walked 9 today, walked 9 yesterday.
I was going to ask you, like, with the weather being what it is, I would imagine there's an opportunity to swing a club. I'm going to try to get out on Sunday.
Well, for me, this time of year, I like cross-country skiing. I like it a lot.
There you
nice
go.
And peaceful.
Yeah.
And usually when there's not snow on the ground, it's cold, Kathy and I will sometimes go to the country club and walk the back 9 for our exercise.
Beautiful.
So I went up yesterday, and I said, wait a minute, why? I'll just bring some clubs maybe while I'm walking.
Love it.
And so, today I don't, we need snow.
Yeah.
But at the same time, if you don't have snow, no sense whining about not have snow. Go do something fun.
Well, I'm one, and I know this isn't necessarily a popular take, and I know you're going to laugh at me, but as I get older, okay, I am less inclined to – I said this to a friend the other day. I could live the rest of my life and not see a snowflake and be fine. I don't give a rip. I don't want it, but I know there are a lot of people around here that love it, so hopefully we get it at some point.
Yeah. It's not the cold's not an enemy for me.
Uh-huh.
Well,
we grew up in the Northeast. The winter there is different.
Yeah, so for me,
That's
you walk
biting.
outside and it's 35 degrees here and you have a sweater on.
Yeah, no, for sure.
It freaks you out.
No, for sure. Like, I always tell people that complain about the winter here, like, go to Chicago in February, go to New York in January. Like, your breath stops inside of your chest. It's a different thing altogether.
That moist cold,
Yeah,
that
for
moist
sure.
cold. So it's not an enemy for me.
Well, it's great to see you as always. It's a great week to have you in. And, I understand based off of your relationships and the nature of who you are, you've got to be careful about certain things. So as I always say, just tap out of any answer you don't want to give me or handle it any way you want to. And look, I have a lot of, family members, namely my father and brother, that are in private equity. Of my 12 best high school friends, I think 7 of them are finance guys. So I feel like I've been drinking through a water hose to get an MBA in finance over the past 72 hours. But the University of Utah, this week it was announced that they have struck a deal with Otro Capital to infuse the program and potentially institution with some immediate cash, and we'll see what they do with it. Let me just ask you your instant reaction to this when you heard the news.
Well, I think people thought the sky is falling, and when you say, I don't want to pick on your family members or your friends, as soon as you say venture capital or equity, you go, oh my God.
They're sharks.
They're going to cut everybody. I'm going to be dead. They're going to pillage and plunder.
Yeah.
But you have to take a look and say, what are the options University of Utah has? And, borrowing money or finding billionaires or trying something innovative. I mean, it's an emergency business. They got to come up with at minimum the $20 million, and that's on top of their regular budget. So it's not all of a sudden, and it's got to be every year.
Right.
So it's not like somebody gives you 5 one year and then not the next. So this seems like the best option to start getting money early on. And there is no 5-year plan anymore. Okay, one of the best articles I ever read was from the Harvard Business Review. It said, "The art of muddling through." The story was you have your 5-year plan, because that was real popular years and years ago.
Sure, yeah.
But if your 5-year plan looks the same in 5 years, you didn't react to the environment. And right now, people you don't read that about 5-year plans.
Yeah.
You know what you want to be.
Yeah.
And it's pretty simple in athletics. Just win, baby, and be in a big conference. And if there's this reduction of a number of football teams, you better be in it. I mean, you know what that is.
Yeah.
And so you got to live through today and tomorrow and the next year or two.
Yeah.
And with the Texas Tech thing, that just scares everybody. But if they get some kind of way of putting a cap on the salaries, and if they pay to people, it's like the good old ways under the table, and we won't have to worry about it.
Yeah.
So
Just don't get caught type stuff.
Yeah.
Well, a lot of layers to this, and you referenced Texas Tech. We'll bring BYU into the equation here, because if you're Taylor Randall, if you're Mark Harlan, if you're among the leaders up there, your task is you have to find a way to keep up with SEC and Big Ten schools that have bigger TV distributions per membership. But then you have to look in your own backyard and say, well, wait a second. It's clear that BYU's financial model is working and has worked now for 3-4 years. The stories about Cody Campbell and oil money for Texas Tech are well documented. Utah had to find their Cody Campbell. They had to find their cookie bro, the cookie money that BYU has. Utah had to find their answer to that. So you're keeping up with the 2 conferences that have better TV deals than you do, but you're also keeping up with the school in your backyard and then the school in Texas that has a tremendous amount of resources. And by all reports, the two schools with the biggest, deepest pockets in the Big 12 are BYU and Texas Tech. They just played for the conference championship.
Oh, yeah.
So this had to be Utah's answer to that, right?
Well, yeah, and I don't know if they can get to that answer. The answer to me is that, plus also having some kind of, if this $20.5 million is real, then they can only pay their players directly $25 million. Then they have these other NIL things which might be corrupt or whatever. You know, as we were talking off air, the bottom line is, why can't we take some part of the NFL model? I mean, I'm a big believer in, okay, this is what we got to do. So every day we got to wake up and figure that out.
Yeah.
You know, and not be afraid of it. But, you know, Texas Tech and BYU can buy players. Now, I understand that may not be just the same way. You know, that you can't, if you want to give somebody $7 million, fine, but then you got $13 million left.
Right.
I mean, you know, and so I don't want to be naive by any way, but, you know, schools have always had more money than Utah, and we've been able to compete. But as long as there's somehow we can spend the same amount of money out of your own university resources, then you got a chance to have similar players. Now, the portal screws that all up, but, you know, college football's chaotic. Right?
Yeah.
I mean, I just laugh and think, you know, you got, you know, 4 equations and you can't solve 4 at one time. And
Right.
It doesn't work.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah. Well, you know, the reports are that the athletic department is in a tremendous amount of debt. Now, that's not a thing that is unique to Utah. It's actually pretty common across the landscape of even some of the biggest athletic departments in America. Ohio State reported a $37 million debt last year after making about $260 million.
Yeah.
The Utah numbers is their revenue, according to what you can just find online, is they made $109 million last year, but their expenses were $125. You ran these departments. To me, it seems like college athletics does not have a revenue-generating problem. It has a spending problem.
Well, yeah, what I've always said is we're a business on the revenue side and a charity on the other side.
Oh, okay. I like
Okay,
that,
you
yeah.
got it? And so you do things that aren't logical. You know, I mean, if the late Larry Miller didn't want to pay his coach, he couldn't get fired. You know, Larry's not going to get fired.
Right, he owns the team.
Yeah. I mean, but now you got people in charge, and all the coach has to do is kind of wink at some boosters and say, I don't know if, you know, they're paying me enough. You know, God. And I have a story for you. One of the ADs I knew years ago, he was, I won't tell the school, he was a Big 12 school.
Okay.
Lots of money, oil money. So he calls me one day and says, well, this is a definition of how this happens. One of our coaches was going to take a big-time job, and he was very successful. And I'll tell you off the air.
Okay.
And so the president calls the AD the next day. No problem. We're paying him $1 million more. He's gone from 3 to 4. And the AD goes, where am I going to get the money? And the president says, listen, we got a $300 billion budget. Do you think they're going to understand, these oil guys and cowboys, that I lost a guy for $1 million?
Yeah.
Boom. It's done.
Yeah.
It's play money.
Yep.
And then I'm looking at it and saying, okay, the buyouts. So, okay, let's be honest. We all want Kalani to get his money, right? Gotta pay him. 8 years later, how come he has such a big buyout? Gosh darn it, how did that happen?
Yeah.
You know, but I walked a mile in those shoes about, you know, trying to hold the line. And there is no reward in this day and age for an athletic director or a president to save money on paying somebody. Pay him too much, you're in debt. The AD from Ohio State, he's in debt.
Yeah.
You know, as long as you win in football or you have a good football coach and you don't cause him to be gone,
Yeah.
you don't get fired for that.
Right?
I mean, you just don't.
Yeah.
You know, so what's the difference whether you're paying them 10 or 14?
Yeah, to your point, the only difference is whether or not it's affecting your bottom line at the end of the fiscal year when you have this debt to service. Now, the interesting thing is not all debt is created equal, and I don't know what the details are of Utah's debt or Colorado's debt, which is $27 million. Like if you have a debt that the interest rate is 3 to 4%, but you're utilizing your cash flow to make 10% on top of it, you're actually coming out on top. But do you anticipate the initial infusion of cash to simply go to service that? That's what most people believe is going to happen. They have to get out from underneath this debt.
I don't think that'll happen. I think they have to, if they're doing this, and I'm not as familiar with debt. We did it 2 years, but the university, we paid it back, but it wasn't like ridiculous.
Sure,
$25 million.
Yeah.
But, I think that if the money that they're going to get, hopefully, and I hope it works because I want the Utes to do well too.
Yep.
And so if that money's not seen as being spent on acquiring players, people are going to say, what's going on?
Yeah.
Where's that money going?
Yeah.
If the players, which, it's good they're getting paid, but if they're not getting money and the rumor on the street is we're not paying $20 million, we're not doing this, people are going to really question any decision.
Yeah.
Players better have money.
Yeah, and the complicated part, because you referenced the $20.5 million, and that's across P4. So that at least is one thing that's regulated. So it's not like Texas Tech has $40 million to pay and Utah has 20.5. No, 20.5 is the number. And by the way, that's for all student athletes. Yeah. Most schools allocate, probably 16 to 17 of that to the football program, thereabouts. Where the line of delineation comes in on the other side of that, which is NIL.
Right.
What you can pay the players on top of the $20.5 million that the school can pay them. And the reports are that, we'll get to Kalani. He said no to Penn State, and it was rewarded handsomely. According to reports, he's now the second highest paid coach in the Big 12 to Dion. Jay Hill gets a raise. Aaron Rodgers gets a raise. His coaches get raises. But he mandated that if he signed a new contract, he needed between $10 to $15 million of additional NIL revenue based off of what they already had. That's the number that I haven't seen. But if it's $10 to $15 million additionally to the NIL prior to, it's probably in the area of 25 mil, meaning this: BYU as an institution can pay their athletes $20.5 million in salaries. And if the numbers are correct, they also have, we'll call it an additional $20 million to utilize for NIL. That, to me, Dr. Hill, is where, I don't know what Utah's numbers are. That, to me, continues to be the big question mark.
Absolutely.
Can Utah keep up in that attendant two space?
Well, and in theory, which the NCAA just keeps getting sued, and that's what's going to happen again and again and again.
And keep losing.
And keep losing. They're over. But, according to what they're saying now, is that NIL money has to have some legitimacy to it.
Yeah, you have to report everything. Yeah.
So if BYU has $15 million, it's hard to imagine that a quarterback can generate $5 million when marketing probably can't do that in the city.
Okay.
That's the theory. Okay, and that's what I said earlier is that, that's the theory, so people will stick to that, but the cheaters will figure out how to cheat.
Yeah.
But because the court of public opinion is, just play to players. And there's no, we'll get back to, there's no the expense side. We always forget about that. And I know, but it's so you can't say as an athletic director, we don't really need 105 guys. We really don't. Besides that, we got the portal, and if we have any weaknesses, we'll just go get those guys. And that's like, you can't say that.
Yeah.
Poor little kids you're taking money away from. You're not supporting the coach. But everybody knows that. But those are tough things for people to do, especially it gets back to the whole, you got to win in football. That's the deal, and that's the prestige. And if you seem to be doing anything to unilaterally disarm, you're dead.
Yeah.
You're dead.
Yep.
So you can't, I mean, you don't have to pay $20.5 million. Who's kidding who?
Yeah.
I mean, you don't need to. Volleyball, when Beth took over and I hired her, you have 12 scholarships. We had 3.
Yeah.
I mean, you can't do that.
Yep.
12 is the minimum, not the maximum.
Yeah.
So whatever it is. But anyway, I got off on that, but I think there's a combination of both. But the NIL thing, if there's any way they can make it like the pros, that would be the deal, because there'd be contracts.
Yep.
The portal is as painful to Utah. Yes, I better say, yes, the players need to have more freedom because the coaches do. And if the coaches leave, you should be able to leave.
Yeah.
But there's got to be some semblance of contracts, and just like the pros, you just come and go. I don't know who does that in pro sports.
Yeah. No, and look, my viewpoint on that is very well documented on this show for 5 years, because I didn't think it was hard to see what was happening. As I continue to say, Ed O'Bannon filed his lawsuit in 2008. You had 17 years to at least prepare for this. And most, if not all of the issues that people continue to bring to the forefront would be solved by just ripping the Band-Aid off and saying, okay, and look, there are very smart attorneys and lawyers that would love to be involved here. Jeffrey Kessler and such, he takes the players unionize. You finally have a governing body that's in charge of the sport with a commissioner. And then the players and the quote-unquote owners governing body, they collectively bargain and they come to an agreement that includes a salary cap. It includes the ability to sign contracts for 2 to 3 years, if not more. Sure. And, oh, by the way, if you're a first-round pick, you go. We've got your back. You don't have to stay here, but you can't go anywhere else for a couple of years. And then all of the NIL essentially the ambiguity around the space would be done away with because you would have legal documents in place that you have to sign. And most everything would be solved by moving to a pro model. And I feel like the only people that push back against that still believe somehow in amateurism, which has been dead for 5 years.
It's interesting. I agree with you. There's no question. It's interesting. There was a SCORE Act. I'm sure you read up on it.
Oh, yeah.
And they were kind of making a little progress. Well, the professional leagues didn't like it.
Mm-hmm.
That's an interesting thing.
Yeah.
And why – the other thing I can't understand is why it's such a dirty word to say they're employees.
Mm-hmm.
We have student workers on campus.
Yeah.
So these are athlete student workers.
Mm-hmm.
Because people hate for me to talk about the academic side of it. I know everybody falls asleep. But if that's not a component of it, I wouldn't buy a ticket in a million years if I was a Utah fan.
I think a lot of people feel the same way.
You put my name on that.
Yeah.
You put my name on that jersey, you better be a student. And I don't want to hear about, they have fresh air classes. And whose fault is that?
Mm-hmm.
You get a bad degree from the university. It isn't the athletic department's fault.
Right.
I took easy classes when I had the opportunity.
We all did.
Yeah, so
we all knew which classes were. We all had the answers to the tests at the frat house. Everybody did that.
Enough of that. But I don't want to have be talking about fresh air degrees and all this stuff.
Sure.
Go talk to the faculty and figure that one out.
Yeah.
If they don't want to give a grade, whatever. And enough of that. But I do think that the long run, we all know what we want. Why can't they be employees? And let's just try to get there, somehow, and not count on the NCAA to do it. We got to figure it out. And everybody, it's kind of funny. Many things aren't as complicated as we make them.
Mm-hmm.
So we all agree.
Yeah.
Well, how do we get there?
Yeah.
Let's not spend our time on what we don't agree on,
mm-hmm.
unless other people don't agree with us. And how could they disagree with us?
Of course.
If it's a 2-0 vote, and how could they do that?
Right.
But everybody talked to knows they want some semblance of order, and they want the kids to get paid. They know that. And we all know the coaches and their buyouts are out of control, but there may not be a solution to that.
I don't think there is a solution to that at this point because, the market tells us what the prices are and you have to stay competitive in that. But, you referenced the SCORE Act. The problem with relying on Congress right now is we have two major political parties that just hate each other. So they're never going to get the votes they need to pass one or the other. Like the Republicans brought one to the floor and the Democrats were giving them the double bird. That didn't pass. Then the Democrats brought theirs to the floor and the Republicans are like, no, I don't think we can rely on Congress. I don't think we can rely on the NCAA. I think this has to be a completely separate thing where football removes itself from the NCAA. And there are a lot of complications there. As far as how it would work, but most of the problems that are plaguing the sport would be solved by that model. When you say, I don't know why people are so scared of calling them employees, the only thing I can think of is the last group of college football fans that still hold on to this idea of amateurism. And they don't like the NFL because of the commercialism and because of how much money is in the sport. They don't like the NBA because employees don't show up for work because they get guaranteed contracts. And college football, in their minds, might be the last bastion of this is a pure thing I can watch. I love sports. I just want to watch something pure. Yeah, even though it hasn't been pure for a long time.
Yeah, I mean, the pure thing is one other thing, but the other element is you go to watch your good old university team play. They're not better than pro teams, so you're not watching it really for the overall skill.
Yeah,
you're watching it because it's my community, it's my school. There's an emotional attachment, and if the emotional attachment, like you hear a lot of things now, well, I don't even know who the quarterback is anymore. I saw him the other day, or I met his parents at a game, but now they're gone.
Yeah.
So you need to be able to have athletes get paid, you need to see is there's a way to legitimately, ethically have people stay a little while. Then the fans will get adjusted to them getting paid, and they'll see they're good old guys, and they'll see they got a U graduate degree or graduates from the U, and that kind of is a little bit of warm and fuzzy. But if you don't see the same guys, you're going to start to lose it,
right?
Because it's not your team anymore.
Yeah,
and so I just feel it can do well. I think the youths can do well. We're never going to have as much money as Ohio State, and I talked to the AD at Ohio State years ago, and we'd say, hey, we're just going to beat you because we have better coaches and a better AD.
Right.
That's how we're going to beat you.
Yeah.
But, Ohio State, from what I understand pretty clearly from one of the coaches there that's not in a major sport, they're kind of shifting down their expenses on those other sports. They're not getting rid of them.
Yeah.
But they're leveling them, like one fully funded, pretty good funded, and maybe not as well.
Yeah.
And almost like a club sport.
Yeah.
And maybe that's what they're doing. But when you say Ohio State lose $27 million, you do kind of shake your head.
Yeah.
And you realize there's an expense problem too.
Yeah.
And it's not like you can cut your way out of it. But the problem is if anybody walked into any athletic department in the country, they'd say, now why are we spending money on that?
Right.
We got a fourth-string defensive lineman?
Yeah.
And he's making $45,000 a year with a scholarship. Please, I don't want to get phone calls from some of the student athletes.
Sure.
I'm just trying to think why they don't. And then you look at that player and say, well, those are the guys that love the university.
Yeah.
You forget that.
Yep.
They all of a sudden know that they're a student athlete after their sophomore year.
Right.
And all of a sudden, you've seen those guys come back. And that's a joy for me because I get to enjoy that because nobody gets to do that but me. Or not too many people do.
Well, you bring up an interesting point about the non-revenue generating sports, or as some would call them, the Olympic sports, and what are the future of those? I mean, because you reference somebody coming into an athletic department and looking at the expenses, and the profit and loss statement and saying, well, wait a second, soccer lost how much money last year? Or wait, track and field, like they'll go over all of the sports that are not generating any revenue yet have expenses. And now that private equity is involved, the fear has to be, look, these are New York private equity sharks. These are finance guys. Okay, they're not on their Long Island yachts wondering about the sanctity of Utah softball or if the Muss is going to have a great experience. They don't give a rip. So the fear, I think, for some is that they will show up here and ask to see, and they probably already looked at the books. I would imagine you don't make a deal until you actually understand what you're doing. But is there a danger that private equity will say, okay, we only want to be in business with your sports that are actually making revenue? Now, the one caveat there is that in this new Utah Brand Entertainment LLC, it is football, basketball, and gymnastics. None of the other sports are included. So part of that leads me to believe that maybe they will be supported because they're not involved in this LLC. I don't know how it's going to play out.
Yeah. I mean, it seems like, from what I'm reading, which I hope is the truth, that the operations and how you spend your money on the different sports are not going to be controlled by this group.
Right.
If that's the case, that's a big relief, because you just don't want that happening to you. I mean, because people recommend who your coach is and all these people, and that's why I never did with search firms or kept it close to the vest, because I don't want somebody to tell me who to hire and the person's no good and then my butt's in a slinger.
You never used a search firm?
I used the one guy that would find out what they were making, who their agent was, if they were BSing me or if they're really interested or not. I didn't want that person to give me a stable of people.
Sure.
But handle all the logistical work.
Okay.
All the research and all that. Because I've seen in AD search, they got their stable. I know that because I was in a stable for a while, and they try to sell their guys.
Yeah.
And they get paid for that. So I was really careful to not have people that, I could take names from people, this or that, but I wouldn't want them to sell me on somebody. And I think search firms have that tendency.
You got a hell of a track record for not using a search firm with all your hires.
Well, I had a guy helping me.
But still.
Yeah. But I mean,
you can take a victory lap for your hires.
I could take other ADs when they used to talk, because we always talked. And, who you looking at, who you doing. That used to be the fun thing about it. And not that yay me, but I just I just didn't want to do it because I didn't want somebody going to the president and saying, "Oh, the search firm really likes this guy."
Yeah.
And I'm rolling my eyes, going, "Oh, President, please.
Right.
I know we're paying these guys $100,000, but the guy I had, and he'll remain nameless, was really good. He found out what everybody was making, all the arrangements. It was kind of the same because I didn't have to do any of the work I didn't like to do. I just had to walk in and with the president talk to the coach.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, it's great.
Yeah, and you could do that then. Now you're hiring people from whatever,
Right.
Never meeting them.
For sure. One more thing for this segment, and then we'll catch a break and do some stuff coming up on the other side. Part of the unique nature of this deal that Utah has with Oaktrow now, which is the first of its kind, is the ability of certain people in our community that have some money to become shareholders and buy in as partners, which is unique compared to the way it is for most schools, namely at BYU, where you donate money.
Right.
And BYU and Notre Dame, religious institutions will always kind of have this advantage because a lot of their donors believe they're not just donating to the athletic department, but they're helping to further the message of the faith system that they exist in. So it's like, oh, wait, this $50 million will not only help your football program, but will help our religion across the world. Boom, where do I donate?
Right.
So when it comes to this dynamic, Utah's now offered the ability for people to partner with them instead of just donate to the school. How do you think this is going to work?
Well, they got to see a profit for them.
Right.
I mean, I think there's people out there, and we talked off air. Yeah, there's people that are wealthy enough to invest, but they're not going to invest unless they don't think there's going to be a profit.
Right.
I have a great grasp of the obvious, don't I?
You sure do.
I
You sure do, Dr.
Let's
Hill.
see.
Yeah.
You invest and you expect to make money. Huh.
Yeah.
I didn't realize I knew that.
But, I mean, a lot of this will be contingent upon whether or not they can find those deep-pocketed people, because the $500 million number that's been reported is not a check from the PE firm. It's a combination of whatever money that they're going to bring to the table to partner with Utah Athletics and then whatever else is out there in the community. It's a combination of the two.
Yeah, and I know you want to break, but at this time, the first hurdle, you're there. You did the best thing you can from the first hurdle. Then you got to figure out some other stuff, but, the sky's not falling.
Sure.
Because you hopefully have that $20.5 million, and there's other things that can enter into it, but I just don't know if there's going to be a $10 million quarterback unless they're cheating under the present rules. Now, I roll my eyes because I'm not naive enough to know that's not happening.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, and we'll get
But
into
nobody
this.
in Utah would cheat.
Never.
Okay, never.
No,
None of the schools would, and so we're fine.
Everything's above board all the time.
Everything.
Yeah, we'll get into some more of this coming up. One of the other, benefits BYU has when it comes to NIL is branding, because a lot of their donors own cookie companies and such, and that's a way to kind of circumvent some of this stuff to say, all right, now this quarterback loves crumble cookies. Here's $5 million. Does Utah have an answer to that? Also, Dr. Hill's thoughts on the fact that BYU has changed their, opinion on paying coaches on a very high level. And then we'll move over to some more Utah stuff. Of course, Dr. Hill is live in studio for another big hit coming up on ESPN 700. All right, we got Dr. Chris Hill live in studio for another segment before we move over to our friends at Handy and Handy for some sports court. It is a interesting day in the world of sports with Sharon Moore, the former head coach of the Michigan Wolverines, currently sitting in a jail cell. The NASCAR versus Michael Jordan lawsuit has been settled, so some interesting stuff. All right, Dr. Hill, good to see you. A little Willie, that's got to put you in a good mood,
nice.
right?
I'm in a good mood anyway, but yeah.
Okay, fair enough.
Helps. He helps, you know.
Music puts me in a good mood.
Yes,
I don't know why.
does.
It's always
It
been
does.
a thing for me.
Peaceful.
But, we were talking last segment, a really interesting shift of philosophy down in Provo. And I never thought Kalani was leaving. I just didn't. It just feels like such a fit. I think certainly people from a national perspective don't fully understand how unique that experience is down there and how hard it is to get a coach that matches their criteria and also a coach that doesn't move down there and look around and go like, what have I gotten myself into? Like cultural fits for BYU, it's different than maybe any other school in the entire country. But when I heard it was Penn State, I went, okay, like that's got to be a job that gets his attention, Kalani's attention. Obviously, Kalani well. I did a coach's show with him when he was up here for years. I cheer for him. I'm glad that it ended with a healthy raise and extension. According to reports, he's now the second highest paid coach in the Big 12 to Dion, and he's going to make $9.5 million per.
Sure.
It's a shift in philosophy as their basketball coach is one of the highest paid coaches in the Big 12 as well. Are you surprised to see them kind of change their ways?
Well, I had a really nice relationship with Tom Homo, and we would talk off and on, and I could see from just little things he said. And then when we played golf when he retired, I took him out. And I'm a lousy golfer, so I don't want anybody listening to think
still
I'm
a good
golfer.
time, though,
I
yeah.
play, but I stink.
Sure.
But I'm proud of it. And so, he was there when they did the young thing, and he says, I just think as long as we don't hurt the mission, as long as we're not seen as unethical, why not win?
Right.
Winning solves a lot of things. So I think, and you've gotten these major contributors involved that have influence on the LDS Church. And why do you want to turn that person saying, no, I don't want you to give money to help the university or help the athletic program? So I think it's a slowly going there as long as their mission, values, all that stuff doesn't alter them. And they're not seen as a cheating university because that would be awful for them.
Right.
Awful.
Yeah.
But if it's seen that, hey, we're just getting better, we're in the game, they might say, hey, you're more modern. You're not living in the past.
Yeah.
So, I'm a little surprised the numbers were that big. But I'm not surprised they're changing because they almost have to. Just like the Utes have been trying to figure out, which we hope this one thing is, to get them where they want to be.
And I want to be clear. I'm not saying BYU is doing anything illegal or untoward. I've actually feel like I've been a voice that stands up for them when it comes to them writing checks. It's very much allowed. What they're doing is legal and also necessary. What confuses me is the hang up from people that are involved with BYU or the LDS Church about the messaging. They do not want to say out loud, like, no, we are among the highest bidders. You're paying a basketball player $5 million for 4 months of basketball. And guess what? High five. Good job. He's the best player in the country. I just don't get the whole fear approach to not say, don't tell me I'm not seeing what I'm seeing. Why the fear of the messaging to just acknowledge that, yes, we are among the highest bidders with all you're now paying your football coach more than the majority of the conference and your basketball coach too. And you're about to get $10 to $15 million in your NIL coffer. And from my perspective, that's all positive, but I don't feel like they want to say it out loud.
Yeah, if you want me to extrapolate and guess on this, I guess I would say there's a lot of people that don't make a lot of money that are BYU fans, just like at Utah. And they may be sitting there, wait a minute. I know my ticket prices are going up, and I love BYU since the beginning of time, my grandpa, my dad. And all of a sudden they're saying, man, that's a lot of money, and I'm still contributing and doing this and doing that.
Yeah. That's a good point.
I'm going to be lost.
Yeah,
and maybe they're just afraid of the common man or woman and, the ones that sit in the north end zone at Utah. They have a lot of pride in that, but you hear it a lot.
Yeah.
They're spending that much money on an 18-year-old kid, and I got to do this, and they don't understand, and he's making that my money. So I can see that maybe being a little afraid of the bigger majority. That's totally a guess.
Yeah.
Off the top of my head.
No, I think it's fair.
10 seconds
I
ago.
think it's good perspective. And, you bring up another point that I want to talk to you about because there's a dynamic of Utah's deal with Otro that I'm undecided as far as how it's going to play out. And ultimately, it's going to be a very vital piece of it. And let me be very clear about this. I'm not saying this is going to happen. I'm not guaranteeing this is about to happen. I'm just utilizing my knowledge and my experience with gentlemen who are in finance and private equity and venture capitalists that all have one goal and one goal only, and that is what is my return on my investment? And that's it.
Right.
So if the exit plan in 5 to 7 years is actually the timeline, Otro's done their calculations to say how much can we make in 5 to 7 years. Now, there's a lot that is involved with that. It's a very sneaky, smart, intelligent way to go about it because in that 5 to 7 year period, a couple things could happen. Number one, that's when the Big 12 television deal is up, so they'll be negotiating a new deal. I'm sure the hope is Utah gets invited to the Big 10, or we have moved into this professional model that you and I have talked about, and therefore your return in 5 to 7 years could be through the roof. There's actually part of me that wonders if Utah underestimated their own valuation here. Now, a lot of things have to fall into place. If you kind of do the math with the numbers, Otro gets 2 seats on the board. The $500 million, if you kind of do the math, the valuation for Utah Athletics is probably between 1.2 and 1.8 billion. And if they get the Big Ten invite, or if there's a pro model and Utah's involved, that valuation is going to skyrocket, and Otro is going to make a lot of money. Right. But in the interim, my guess is, and I want to be clear, it's my guess, Utah season ticket holders are going to get an email in the coming months where it's like, hey, we love you. Go Utes. Oh, by the way, 30% upcharge. If you have a tailgate lot, where you like to go tailgate before the game, you'll get an email that says, hey, we love you. Please keep tailgating. Oh, by the way, it's an extra, 10 grand or whatever. There's going to be a big portion of our community that isn't among the folks that were allowed to buy into this as a partnership that will be asked to shoulder the cost. Yeah. How do you think they react?
Yeah, well, if anybody's priced, I've never met anybody in my life that said, please charge me more.
Right.
Okay, I don't want to pay that for a sweater, so please just up the cost. But I guess the beginning and end for me right now is here's your option. You got to go with your option, and got to figure out how to make it work, got to figure out how to have the fans not feel gouged. So I know exactly what you're saying, and I've heard that from everybody, and I have to admit that would be something I would think of where we're going to get the money. And
right.
Big-time investors that can see themselves making money. Not donors, but investors. And there's people in town that would like to invest in the University of Utah if they could see a return.
Yeah.
I don't want to have doom and gloom. I think we got to step in a direction where we can get to $20 million, at least in theory, and go from there. But I'm just thinking in my head right now. This is a 10-second thing. Why doesn't one big equity firm go buy 20 schools?
Well,
just pick off 20.
It's a lot of money.
So their TV contracts. Okay,
yeah.
Let's look at the top 20 schools in the country.
Mm-hmm.
I just thought of this. So
yeah.
The top 20 schools in the country are bought, and that company owns them.
Yeah,
and they own all the television for those 20 schools.
Well,
all the marketing?
What's intriguing about that?
Never mind. I don't know anything about equity. I'm just a laborer in the vineyard. I got paid twice a month.
Well, no. I'm just kind of processing it because this kind of underscores our point about regulation. Like you couldn't do that in the pros. You're not allowed to. You're allowed to buy one team. But is there anything in collegiate athletics in the landscape that would we'll use Bain Capital or we'll use BlackRock, that I don't even know how much BlackRock has hundreds and hundreds of billions of dollars, I would imagine, at their disposal under management. Is there anything that's stopping one of the massive private equity or venture capitalist funds in our country from buying the top 40 teams in America and then starting their own league? I don't know.
Well, that's why it's in chaos right now.
Yeah.
The people in charge of this better start to recognize what we have to do.
Yeah.
I get back to it. We want to have football and all these sports do well. Mm-hmm. Some of the schools that don't have football still have women's softball. They've figured out how to fund it, and it's part of a university or whatever. But we know where we want to go. If we don't act quickly, we're going to keep further and further behind. If the NCAA is too relevant in their mind, then we're going to have another lawsuits and go over again. So somehow they have to reduce the chaos, and I still get back to somehow some modification of the pro model would be helpful.
I'm looking this up right now as we're talking about it in real time. KKR, according to the intranet, is the biggest private equity firm that exists. And if you click on their website, I wonder how much money they have as far as at their disposal to utilize. I don't think their website is actually going to let you know. So I'll have to look at like their filings to see. BlackRock is third. If anybody has a 401k, chances are you're invested into BlackRock. So look, I don't know. Again, back to my knowledge of just how it works in professional sports. You're just not allowed to buy more than one team.
Right, yeah.
And I believe if you're a private equity firm, you're not allowed to even be an investor in more than one team. Like you can't invest in the Suns and the Jazz, and you can't invest in the Broncos and the Bills.
Wait a minute. Are you going to beat me up for something that had just 10 minutes of an idea?
No, I think it's I actually no.
You're already shooting holes in something I just threw out of the way.
Okay, here are the numbers. So KKR, according to their latest filing, has $117.9 billion as far as the funds they've raised over the past 5 years. EQT, has $113.3 billion. Blackstone, as I referenced, $95.7 billion. So it's a lot of money. And at this point, I'm actually just pontificating about possibilities based off of your thought about whether or not one of these big dogs could say, hey, guess what, SEC? You're now a property of KKR. Congratulations. We own every team. I don't know how that would work. I actually have to go through the mechanics.
No, I actually, I used to do this at work. I'd come up with ideas, and then I'd look around the room, and I said, well, you're just telling me the AD really had a stupid idea, right? So that could be me right now.
No, I think it's intriguing because there has to be there may have to be a third party. And Brian Rolap, friend of the show, who was Roger Goodell's right-hand man, he's now the CEO of the PGA Tour. But at one point, The Athletic had a report that Brian Rolap was trying to gather funding and investments to essentially start the pro model in college football. And say, I'm your commissioner. We now own the teams in the SEC and the Big Ten. You're with us now. And we create an AFC, NFC picture. And in that hypothetical scenario, the hope obviously is, okay, it's not just the SEC and the Big Ten. We want Utah. We want BYU, maybe Colorado. I don't know. Like you get to 40, you have 20 in each conference, and away we go. You can break away from the NCAA, have a governing body, let the players unionize, collectively bargain, and come up with a pro model that would really solve all the things that are going on in college football right now.
Well, if it may be that simple, because sometimes, like I said earlier, sometimes we, there's obvious answers once we agree upon the big picture.
Uh-huh.
And maybe even go a step further. They'd be University of Utah connected, and maybe everybody else could go home. All the other sports could go home, where they were let and have regional and all that stuff, and maybe just say to the equity firm, hey, we got to get $20 million back for the rest of the department.
Yeah.
That's an expense.
Yeah. I think you and I just solved the problems. We should get a piece of equity in this hypothetical idea if it's
like
executed.
I said, I was just got paid twice a month.
Sure.
Didn't invest. Just keep my head down. That's what I did.
And you were damn good at it. I mean, the proof is in the results. Let me ask you this. So when I unpacked this story, I think it was Tuesday of this week. After my show, I got a text message from somebody who I'll just say would know. And this goes back to the properties that are involved with this new LLC, Utah Brand Entertainment, which are football, basketball, and gymnastics. And I said on the show that, of course, football drives most of the revenue. Basketball is still profitable because of March Madness. According to The Athletic, there are 0 women's basketball teams that are revenue generators in the country because I thought maybe the Caitlin Clark effect and the massive ratings. None of them are making money, including South Carolina, including UConn.
Wow.
But I said on the show, and here at Utah, it's unique because the gymnastics team is revenue generating. And I got a text message after the show that said they're not. They don't generate revenue.
They generate revenue, but do they show a profit?
They do not. Excuse me.
No, they used to.
I should have said that.
You know,
yeah, they don't show a
15,
profit.
20 years ago.
Okay.
And they do a great job. Donors sponsor every, Greg and Megan, and knows they sponsor every one of their players and everything. But the expenses are so high. Tuition's gone up.
Yep.
Salaries, benefits, travel, all that stuff. People don't realize what's into it. And then they don't even cost out as part of the trainer part of that budget.
Mm-hmm.
Like they would do at
Yep.
a business.
Yeah.
What's your office space cost you? What's this? What's that? So gymnastics is a great feel-good. People on campus love it. People in the community love it. And it's revenue generating, which makes them a valuable sport more than financially than the other sports that are losing everything.
Yeah. And I misspoke there. Of course, they generate some revenue, but according to the profit and loss statement, the P&L statement, and the financials, the expenses supersede the revenue, and therefore they don't generate a profit. Is how I should have put that. When it comes to,
you'd be surprised how many basketball don't. But keep going. When it comes to what?
As far as men's basketball programs
not
across
as
the
many as
country,
you think. It's not as much a cash cow as you think.
Be very, because my understanding is they all are profitable simply for one thing, and that's March Madness. How much money the tournament brings in. Is that not the case?
I don't think so.
Do you have any idea what it is here?
I did, when Rick was here, we were making a profit.
Of course.
Yeah. In every way.
Final four runs might help a little bit, Dr. Hill, there's no doubt.
Well, you take outside of Gonzaga in the West Coast Conference, nobody's making money.
Yeah. Let me ask you this before I set you loose, as somebody who once upon a time was in charge of the budgets and how this works, because we talked about this to kind of start the conversation. What I've been told is the initial cash infusion will be used to service debt, and then they're going to move over to maybe some stadium renovations with the Huntsman Center and Rice-Eccles. I anticipate as part of the renovations, based off of what I'm anticipating with, upped prices, more like luxury suites, maybe some branding opportunities, licensing opportunities. You can, they're going to come up with creative ways, these private equity guys. Like, you can put your name on a seat at Rice-Eccles now. It's just going to cost you $20,000, stuff like that.
Yeah.
So how does that work? Like, when you analyze what the Huntsman Center needs, what the football stadium needs, like when you're going through that process, what does that look like?
I benefited from this. We didn't own and operate the arena and Rice-Eccles. We paid a rental fee. Oh. And so if they did events at Rice-Eccles Stadium, we didn't make money.
Okay.
But, and that was the way it was, and one of the rubs I had. But for me, they could charge us whatever we wanted sometimes.
Yeah.
They could do, so it was very scary. But at the same time, if I had an extra nickel, would I spend it on fixing the floor or getting another athlete?
Yeah.
Pretty soon the floors would be ruined.
Right. Yeah.
So, that's something that people never understood.
Yeah.
And how they would charge us. And that would cause some tension on campus.
Yeah.
And that was a way, if they thought the way I did, would be a way of help supporting us without it having a red flag attached to it.
Huh.
Give them a low rental fee, and they don't have to pay all the maintenance and all the electricity and stuff.
Yeah.
That's more detailed than you would ever want.
No, I didn't even know that. That's really interesting. Look, there's so many layers to this stuff. We could talk for another 2 hours, but I'm going to set you loose so you can go get to the back nine, okay?
That's tomorrow, 18 tomorrow.
Oh, love it.
Yeah.
Good for you.
No kidding around.
Take advantage of it. Great to see you, okay?
All right, buddy. Thanks.
All right, Dr. Chris Hill. I want to remind you that ESPN 700 and the Rocky Mountain Chevy dealers invite you to help those at the road home this holiday season with needed blankets, coats, shoes, hats, and gloves. Drop off donations at any Rocky Mountain Chevy dealer. Visit ESPN700sports.com for dealer locations. Spread the warmth and help others find their way home. And join us at the Midvale Road Home Mediathon, December 18th through the 19th. More next on ESPN 700. It is Sports Court time. We do it every Thursday. We got a juicy edition today with our friends over at Handy and Handy. Garrett and Preston, happy Thursday, gentlemen. How are we doing?
Hey, Spence. How you doing?
We're good. We're good. Let's get right into it. And we have covered this since it first broke. And there is a settlement after, I think, only 9 days between NASCAR and two of their, quote, teams, one owned by someone named Michael Jordan. You may have heard of him. Walk us through it. What do we got going on?
Yeah, Spence. So we've learned a lot about NASCAR in the last few years. I didn't know about it, but NASCAR operates, it's owned by a family, and they have charters that they provide racing teams. And our guy, Michael Jordan, has part ownership in two of these teams. Well, a couple of years ago, I think it's been a couple of years ago, and probably a lot of the teams felt this way before, but none of them had the financial backing or the wherewithal to do it. And Michael Jordan, he sued NASCAR, and his claim essentially was that NASCAR operates as a monopoly, and it violates antitrust rules because it has charters and it has multi-year contracts that people are roped into. They have to sign a release of claims. They have a non-compete agreement, all of these things. And Michael Jordan's team finally said, hey, we need to challenge this. So it's been going through litigation, and frankly, Michael Jordan's teams have lost a lot of the motions and that type of thing. That doesn't mean they get kicked out, but they've lost a lot of the motions along the way, and there's certain claims have been dismissed, and they've appealed them. And we've always said, when you have one of the most competitive people alive who's a billionaire, that's not, he's not going to shy away from litigation. Well, surprisingly, this thing made it to trial, and it started about a week and a half ago, and a lot of cases don't make it to trial, but this actually made it to trial, and His Airness even testified, and he testified to certain things like he said he had no choice to do this, and he wasn't afraid to challenge the establishment. Was not as he changed, and he was standing up for everyone else. He said, there's part of his testimony that says I can't find it, but essentially it was, hey, I'm sticking up for everyone. We need to have a better system here, and so Jim France, who's the chairman of NASCAR, he also testified, and apparently he was really bullish. He says we're not going to back down. This is a good system for everyone. He apparently was even heard saying something like, this is a competition and we're going to win. Well, this morning, Jeffrey Kessler, in the midst of a trial, he stands up and says, Judge, I'm pleased to say that the parties have positively settled this matter in a way that will benefit the industry going forward. Now, a lot of the terms of this have not been set out, but they, a few of the things they say that allow all parties to move forward in a unified focus. Existing charter holders detailed updated terms for signature. They'll all have to agree to it. They said teams and drivers and partners will now have the stability and opportunity they deserve. So it really changes the whole the way NASCAR has operated. I mean, in a way, I think the teams won. I guess maybe NASCAR caught wind that MJ is undefeated in the finals, but it's kind of surprising that it has settled this quick. It really is. I mean, the judge, incidentally, he was heard saying, he voiced that he didn't see an end in sight. He was frustrated with the progress of this and kind of didn't see an end in sight. And, we might have been talking about like a 2-month trial. But, kind of surprising in the first week and a half that they've reached a settlement, and hopefully we'll hear about the terms of this.
All right, Garrett, over to you, buddy.
Well, I think NASCAR and the France family had a lot to lose if they were going to lose this trial, right? I mean, they could have been forced with selling racetracks and the France family losing control of NASCAR. And so in some ways, I'm not super surprised to see that they flinched. I mean, they just had a lot on the line. So good to see that the case is settled, though, because both parties, from their statements, seem to be pleased with the result.
All right, moving over to This Is Wild. About 15 minutes before the show ended last night, there was breaking news that Sharon Moore had been fired by the University of Michigan. And then when I was on my way home, I received alert on my phone that he was in police custody. So a crazy story in Ann Arbor. The time is yours. What's the latest?
Yeah, it is crazy, and Sharon Moore is going to appear for an arraignment tomorrow, and so we're probably going to know a lot more tomorrow about the actual criminal charges that are filed. that have been filed. But and the University of Michigan, I mean, they pulled the trigger pretty quick on this, right? I mean, as soon as these allegations came out, they fired him for cause. And we've talked a lot on Sports Court about what that means and doesn't mean, especially recently in light of Brian Kelly's contract with LSU. But what it means is that he's not going to have a buyout or anything. He's done, and that this violates certainly a provision in Michigan's contract. And all we really know right now is that there was an alleged some sort of a sexual assault. And that from Michigan's side of things, again, regarding the contract that they have with the coach, was that there was an quote, inappropriate relationship with a staff member. And so he's let go for that reason. But then on the other side of this, we have a criminal case where he's arrested. And since then, what we've learned is he was placed on like a mental health, watch. Maybe a suicide watch from what I'm seeing. In fact, just some 911 dispatch calls have been released recently, which a couple of things. One, about him stalking this apparently staffer for months, she said. And then also the other call was from, I think, his wife saying that he was suicidal after losing his job today. So, yeah, there's a lot going on here, Spence. It's a crazy story, but needless to say, I mean, one day you're the University of Michigan coach, and the next year, I guess, he's in jail. So we'll know a lot more tomorrow, I think.
All right, Preston, over to you, buddy.
Yeah, I hadn't couldn't find a lot on exactly what the assault was and a lot of details on it. That there was an inappropriate relationship with a staffer. I'm going to kind of try and present maybe the other side of this. This for cause thing. Apparently, Michigan did an investigation months ago, and they found no wrongdoing. And there's rumblings, I don't know where someone's hearing this, that Moore said the University of Michigan people above knew about maybe an inappropriate relation for months and didn't do anything about it. So now does that mean that they're complicit in it? Probably not. But, yeah, we contrast this with Brian Kelly, where he was fired and then they tried to say for cause, and there was no really reason. But apparently, his part of Moore's contract, it says that there's conduct that offends public decency or morality determined by standards in the prevailing community. Let's just say he did say that they jumped the gun and wanted to challenge this, that he wasn't, shouldn't have been fired for cause. We've seen that happen before. Fitzgerald at Northwestern did that, and he actually came out on top. So, whether there's another side of the story and he wants to do that, he's losing a lot of money, and so he's got a lot at stake. I don't know if someone, if he presents his case to him, if they'll take it, but I'm sure we'll hear about it if he does challenge their decision to fire him for cause.
Yeah, just a wild 24 hours with this story escalating pretty quickly. All right, we'll stay in the world of college football. Georgia seeking $390K in NIL damages. Damon Wilson transferred to Mizzou. So this is a classic NIL dispute. What do we have going on here?
Yeah, I think there's been one before, Spence, and this is kind of a wild one. But apparently this player, Damon Wilson, playing for Georgia last year at the end of the year, and he reaches an NIL deal with Georgia to pay him roughly $500,000 over 14 months at about $40,000 a month. Well, the new year comes, and he bounces to Missouri. And so Georgia, he plays a whole year at Missouri, plays really well apparently. And now Georgia's going to him and saying, hey, we're going to sue you for that contract. And the first thing that came to my mind was, well, he accepted the $500,000 and got it in his pocket and didn't pay for him. So it's kind of unjust enrichment. He didn't make good on the contract. But no, apparently he only received $30,000 of the contract, and Georgia now wants $400,000 back essentially, and what they're relying on is what's called a liquidated damages clause. And a lot of contracts have liquidated damages clause, where it says if you can't ascertain or really quantify the damages, if either of you breach it, hey, you got to pay this. And if people enter into a contract and they realize that's part of the contract, and if you breach it, then you're going to be on the hook for it, they do it. It's part of the arm's length contracting. But I think this is a real tough one for Georgia. I'm kind of surprised they're doing this in the fact that they're only out $30,000. Maybe they're looking at the fact that he had 9.5 sacks and 10 tackles for loss this year, and maybe some of those were against the Georgia Bulldogs. I don't know. That's what they're just trying to recover for.
What do you got, Garrett?
Well, I think it's something that maybe a player's agent should be taking into consideration when giving the player advice about taking an NIL deal at a new school, and that would be including a clause in their contract, essentially an indemnity agreement, basically saying, hey, if you get sued by your old school for some sort of breach of contract claim, your new school is going to step in and cover it. Because, getting hit with a $400,000 or $390,000 or whatever liquidated damages clause, that's a lot. And so you'd want to make sure you're covered in some way and could be part of your contract negotiations with your new school.
All right, over to the latest with the SCORE Act, Congress SCORE Act, and this is something we've talked about because of the bipartisan nature. Looks like they've canceled the vote for the SCORE Act, and I think this will just continue to be stuck in Congress. But what's the latest here? What's going on?
Yeah, here's the stat I want to throw out to you, Spence. Since 2020, more than 40 bills have been introduced into Congress to somehow, reform college sports. None of them have passed into law. So we don't have to be totally shocked here that Congress is not getting this done, and they are going to punt on this or whatever, kick the can down the road, whatever analogy you want to use. And I guess in some ways I get it. I mean, this is such a moving target all the time, right? New things are coming up. I mean, still trying to get the House settlement in place and all of this. But really the question is every time the NCAA enacts some sort of rule or tries to restrict something, they're hit with an antitrust lawsuit. And that's where a lot of this, grows out of with all NIL and transfer portal and things like that. And so one of the things this SCORE Act would have done is would have provided some antitrust protection for the NCAA. It also would have said that college athletes are not employees. And so I think that's something that, maybe we need to look at. When I say we, I mean the NCAA, colleges, and conferences. Can they get together and adopt their own rules that don't run afoul of antitrust laws? I mean, that would really be the best thing at this point, rather than relying on Congress to provide some sort of resolution to this, because, again, with them, punting on the SCORE Act that, seemed like was going to be maybe a solution to some of these things, we're a long ways off from having any kind of a legislative solution.
Over to you, Preston. What's going on here?
Yeah, good. Garrett nailed it. But where we don't have antitrust lawsuits? In the professional sports. Mm-hmm. Why? Because they have collective bargaining agreements and players unions, and that's why we don't have them. And so, there needs to be something like that, because we've talked dozens and dozens and dozens of times of antitrust lawsuits, and that's where the O'Bannon, the Alston, the House case, that's what they all grew out of. So, hopefully we can get – I think everyone would agree we want some stability and some predictability.
Preston, if I didn't know better, I would think you listen to this little old radio show from time to time with that last answer. It's something we've talked about quite a bit. All right, we'll end with a story of great interest around here and the main content driver on this show all week, which is a new era for the University of Utah Athletic Department and the first agreement of its kind into a agreement with Otro Capital, a private equity firm based in New York. My thoughts and opinions are very well documented, so I'm just going to give you guys the floor. What do you think?
Well, I'd like to know your thoughts and opinions. Maybe you can end it for us, because you probably know more about this than we do. When it broke, Garrett and I just said, there's some legal issues. Obviously, there's a lot of legal goings on to get this deal in place. That will be a lot of transactional stuff with transactional lawyers to get this in place and make sure it looks good. But, what I know about it, and I don't know a ton about it, but, the U has partnered with they're setting up Utah Brands and Entertainment. And as part of this, they partnered with a private equity firm, Otro Capital, who has, experience in the space of in the sports world. And so the plan is, number one is to get an infusion of money. But the question comes to everybody's like, well, how's this going to change things? Well, it's going to make Utah competitive in that, but how's it going to change other things? And so I read that, there's going to be a board, the AD is going to be on it with 3 foundation members, a couple of Ultra people, and then someone outside that. There's ways to, rather than be a booster, to invest in this, all kinds of things. And so, we just kind of brainstormed and thought, what are the legalities to this? And the reason I brought this up, and it's probably much ado about nothing, but a legislator, legislators always want to stick their nose in some things sometimes, and I don't even know the name of them, tweeted out something like, hey, wait a minute. This didn't go through the normal processes. Seems like that you need approval here, and that we've just sold our biggest state agency, to a private equity firm. And I guess what the point they're trying to make is, like, let's say a big agency with the state, UDOT, for example, has a big project going that maybe they're required to send it out to several different parties to get contracts and bids and, get the most competitive one and look at it. And maybe there's just processes you have to do, and maybe the U falls outside that. But another thought came to mind is, what if private equity comes in and says, hey, we need to skinny down that department, the sports information group or whatever, and people start losing their jobs. I don't know. Just throwing out that there might be legal issues along the way. I'd love to say, this is just a really smooth thing, and it's great for Utah athletics. Wait and see, right?
Wait and see is the correct answer. Garrett will give you the final word on this, my friend.
Well, I like to see that at least the University of Utah is doing something here, because it is an arms race, right, in college sports. And I don't think you want to be the last school looking around for a private equity partner if this is the way things are going. So there's certainly risks involved in this, and we'll just see how it plays out.
Yes, sir. For any of our legal questions, gentlemen, before I set you loose, for any of our listeners who have legal questions, how can they get a hold of you? Over at Handy and Handy.
You're right, Spence. I'm an avid listener to the program.
Thank you,
love
sir.
it. Love your program. Handy and Handy, we've been coming on here a long time and doing Sports Court, talking about these interesting legal issues in the world of sports. Handy and Handy is a personal injury law firm. We represent people that have been involved in accidents where they've suffered injury and damages, take them through a really stressful time, make sure they get taken care of and compensated through the legal and insurance process. We'd love to hear from you out there. Give us a call at 801-264-6677 or jump on our website at handylawutah.com.
All right, guys, I always appreciate the time. Have a great weekend ahead. And, of course, as always, go Utes.
Go Utes. Thanks,
Go Utes.
Garrett and Preston Handy from the law firm of Handy and Handy. I always appreciate those guys stopping by. All right, we've got 3 hours down. We have 1 hour to go. We will say goodnight at 6 o'clock in time for some Thursday night football between the Bucs and the Falcons. So keep it right here on ESPN 700. All right, wrapping it up. Thursday Night Football coming up on the other side of a quick break. It is the Falcons and the Bucs. Atlanta has been eliminated from the postseason. And Tampa Bay trying to get back at it. It's been a rough month for Baker Mayfield. Fun show. No new news on the Sharon Moore situation. It'll be expected in court tomorrow. If anything comes our way, of course, we'll bring it to you. All right, Porter, before we say goodnight, what comes our way on a Friday edition of the program?
Friday edition of The Drive. How about Eric Weddle joining the program? Talk a little college football, Utes with him. Howard Beck for our NBA Daily Assist. We're going to catch up with our guy Paul Pugmire. A little golf in December. And then I was up on campus with Alex Jensen earlier today. So we'll get a little bit of sound from him and go from there.
There you go. There you go. We are moving closer and closer to that time of year where it's time to lean into some college football or college basketball conversation as it pertains to college football kind of coming to an end. We'll say goodnight. Special thank you today to Kyle Bonagura, Sam Bruckhouse, and the great Dr. Chris Hill. If you miss any of the sound from the show today, go to the website, which is ESPN700sports.com. Download our mobile app and take us on the go. ESPN 700 app available in the App Store and the Google Play Store. And then we're asking you, please, to support our podcast page, which is called The Drive with Spence Checketts, and that's available wherever you get your shows. Subscribe, rate, review, say nice things in the comments, and give us all the stars. It helps. For Porter, I'm Spence saying goodnight. Have a great Thursday evening. Enjoy some Thursday Night Football. We'll talk to you on a Friday Drive, weekend style, right here on ESPN 700.